What is up? Yes, we have made it. We survived into the year of our Lord 2025. Thanks everybody for joining us. No, we're going at a different time today. We're treating this kind of as our normal Sunday recap on a Thursday. Going to be back to our normal time in the studio, 2:00 on Monday, Central, of course. That's 3 p.m. Eastern. Gentlemen, let me go ahead and bring you in here. There's a lot we got to get to, and we don't have a ton of time to do it. David Cohn, my brother Blaine Crane, one, the former quarterback at Michigan, the other former wide receiver at Western State, Colorado, and or member of the KGB. We're still trying to figure out the details. David, I'm going to start with you real quickly before we get into the recap of, the assault that was laid at the hands of Oregon yesterday by Ohio State and obviously Texas finding a way to survive against Arizona State. Give me one of your New Year's resolutions.
Well, first off, Happy New Year. Yeah, well, I want to do more push-ups and read more books. Can we do that? That's part of the Crane and Company mantra. More push-ups, read more books.
Blaine, what is yours?
Probably to never change. Never change, ever.
Why change perfection?
Exactly. I'm just never. My New Year's resolution is to not change anything I'm doing.
That's crazy because that was mine too. That's amazing. All right,
hey, you're about to be a daddy, man.
Dude, January 9th. It's to the point. Like the last 2 days, we've been in the month of when the baby is coming. I mean, so we got till they say typically it doesn't happen exactly on the due date, especially with the first one. It happens after. We're going to our last doctor's appointment right after I get off here. So
good.
The last one, it is. I don't want to say it's flown by because I'm not the one that's pregnant. But I feel like it's gone by fast.
Just emotionally. You're just emotionally pregnant.
I'm emotionally pregnant.
Yeah.
That's what I am. I'm pregnant with emotions. Well, Oregon's pregnant with something else, and that's a huge loss after what happened yesterday. I know we're going to get to the rest of the bowl games. We're going to give you a best and worst, even to a little NFL talk here at the end. But, Blaine, I want to start with you, man. We've complained and people have talked about the college football playoff games. They haven't been great. We've had these blowouts because this team doesn't belong and that team doesn't belong. But, I mean, what do you say now? Oregon belonged. Is Ohio State – have they just gotten to the point now where we were looking at them earlier in the year and we're like, they got all this talent. You brought in all these guys on offense. Will Howard, even the freshman Jeremiah Smith. You look at Carnell Tate. You look at Egbuka. I mean, even G. Scott, who made a play to start out the game yesterday. Are they just finally playing good and they were just better than everybody the whole time? Is that what this is?
I think so. I mean, we talked about this roster from the beginning of the season and how much money they really put on it. And I like the way Ohio State's built. The reason I picked them before the season started, they're the type of team that you don't need Will Howard to play elite to win a national championship. I think your roster is good enough. So say you do have an injury at quarterback, you're still good enough to play with any other team. Sometimes it takes something to happen for a team to figure it out. And I don't think that was on the road at Oregon when they lost by 1, when Dane Lanning threw 12 people on there. I think it was the Michigan game where Ohio, after that game, all the crap that got talked about Ohio State, from the players to the coach to their fan base, that gave them something to manufacture to go play. And, guys, you see it from the roster from top to bottom. I mean, this NFL player is running all over the football field. This is the Ohio State team I expected to see the entire year. It's the reason I picked them before the season started and stayed with them when the playoff picture started. So am I surprised the way they beat Oregon that bad? For sure. And the biggest thing about Ohio State, and we talked about it, the biggest weak point was their offensive line. And how you have Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, and not be able to run the ball, I don't know. But they're starting to figure that out. Will Howard is starting to play like the Will Howard we saw from last year, and that makes them the most dangerous team in the country.
Well, to your point, I agree with most of what you said, but for them to have blossomed, David, the way that they have blossomed, I think they've realized who they are. Like, if you look at the games against Tennessee and Oregon, I mean, even Ryan Day said it. We may have to pass to run a little bit on early down. What did they do early in both those games? They got the ball to Jeremiah Smith in space. They got it out quick. What they did against Michigan, it was an emotional game plan. It was an immature and emotional game plan to go out there and say, you know what? Michigan is good at really one thing, and that's physicality, mucking it up, stopping the run, right, and trying to run the ball. So what does Ohio State do against Michigan? They go out there and try and run it in between the B gaps, running right into the only trap that Michigan could set for you. But when they operate like this, it takes a ton of pressure off that offensive line. They were bombing on Oregon before they were running all over Oregon. The run followed the pass. The touchdown to Jeremiah Smith, the touchdown deep to Egbuka. Then all of a sudden, you have to start manipulating the numbers in the box and maybe keeping 2 safeties high, maybe keeping some help back. And that's when Quinshot and Travion start to hit you up front. I mean, Cone, is Ohio State a quote-unquote finesse team offensively in regards of passing to run instead of trying to bulldoze everybody? Which, I mean, if you score a touchdown, it doesn't matter how you get there.
The Buckeyes have finally become the team that we were promised when we talked about this roster all offseason. And what you have to understand, for most of the season, the Buckeyes have been dominating their opponents. I mean, when you have 9 of the 12 regular season games, if you take out Michigan and Oregon and the closer game against Penn State, for the most part, they dominated their opponents. But it was mostly in the second half. What's so different about these 2 college football playoff games is they've jumped out to the early lead. The Buckeyes had Oregon beat before the Peach Bowl was even over. By the time the network switched over from a double overtime game, it was already 7-0. So if you didn't have 2 TVs going, you missed Jeremiah Smith's first touchdown. And that's what's so different about what's going on with the Buckeyes right now. And again, I'll continue to say, just like I said after the Tennessee game, there are too many college football fans across the country who only watch the Michigan game. And that's natural, right? If you're not a fan of that team or that conference, you only watch a team when they're playing in the biggest moment. And that's one of the biggest rivalries in the sport. So too many people only watch that game and they dismiss the Buckeyes as a mediocre, average team. I'm just telling you guys, and you guys know it better than anyone being involved with the Iron Bowl rivalry. How many times have you seen Alabama be the best team in the country and either lose or nearly lose to a 6-6 or a 7-5 Auburn team? Because those rivalry games just mean more. Was the game plan for the Buckeyes in that game just completely baffling? Yes, it was. At the same time, Michigan's going to have maybe 3 first-round picks on defense. Like, we have to give them some credit for that game. And I think the way this team has responded, there's 2 different ways, because that's the worst loss of Ryan Day's coaching career, period. There's multiple ways you can respond to that. You can either fold up and say, maybe I'm not the right guy for this job. Maybe the fan base here does hate me. I can't beat my biggest rival. We can't beat SEC teams. You can fold up, or you can do the exact opposite and respond the way that they have, because right now they look like the best team in college football.
Oh, they're in God mode right now on both sides of the ball. And I want to get to the Ohio State defense too, because and when we get to Oregon, I want to let everybody know in the chat, we appreciate you being here. Hit that subscribe button. Remember, if you donate, it's on topic. It will get read. We're going to get to you guys in 1 second before we move on to any other previews or recaps. But as we move on to Oregon, though, I do want to make this point. You're going to hear everybody and most people in sports media that cover college football, and they're right to a certain extent, say, oh, well, losing to Michigan emotionally got this team to come together and do all this and play for each other, and it embarrassed Ryan Day and this, that, and the other. I think what happened, the most advantageous thing that happened because of that loss, and I know Ohio State fans didn't want to lose that game, I think it was schematically. Because when Ohio State didn't play teams that were close to their caliber most of the year, right? That was the knock. It was, well, you played Oregon, who is an elite team, we think, at least we thought they were, and you lost by 1 on the road. Dan Lanning had to have a magic penalty at the end to win the game. Outside of that, they really didn't play anybody that you're like, golly, like, this is probably a playoff team outside of, Penn State, and they handled them pretty well, but it wasn't a dominant, unbelievably, incredibly dominant game that looked like Ohio State was way better than Ohio State. I think it meant more schematically. I think it showed them like, dude, listen, we can sit up here and we know Quinshon's good. We know Travion's good, but we have to let Will Howard get the ball out in space. Do you notice how little they've run Will Howard compared to when they did it earlier in the year? Like and I know they really didn't have to. The quick game is what's killing everybody. That's what would scare me the most. Jeremiah Smith took basically a swing pass to the house from 45 out after making 2 guys miss, and then they're hitting you down the field, and G. Scott's getting more involved, right? Didn't see him at all really during the Michigan game. So I think schematically it kind of evened some things out for Ohio State, and they are now playing to their strengths. But, Blaine, back to you, Oregon, right? I wasn't, and I tweeted this out during the game, I wasn't shocked that Ohio State was scoring on Oregon.
No.
We saw them score 37 points the first game. What shocked me was for the first quarter and a half at least, and I know a quarter and 3/4 of another quarter, Oregon was getting suffocated like an anaconda was wrapped around them. And whether it was Cody Simon, whether it was Caleb Downs, whether it was Jack Sawyer, whether it was Tyleek Williams, or one of those other things that Ohio State has running around in that front seven, that was what shocked me the most because Dylan Gabriel's played 835 college football games.
66 starts.
That's incredible.
It wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. Let's tell you how good the Ohio State defense is. And not only their ones, but their twos. Like I watched their twos come in and start making plays. The depth is just absolutely off the charts. But this is what you get when you have it. Like when you have Caleb Downs as your leader. And I didn't know why Oregon did this. Their first 3 drives, their third downs. Who do they go at? They win at Caleb Downs. If there's a guy I'm not going at on this defense, I promise you, I would rather go at Burke on the outside, who played a lot better in this game. But the big thing Ohio State did was they kept Oregon in front of them, right? You have to take the explosives away from Oregon. You pressured Dylan Gabriel. The only time they had anything, Dylan Gabriel had to create in the backfield. No run game. You had 2 injuries early for Oregon that did not help. And you find yourself in such a hole. You're down 21-0 or 17-0, something like that, to where you can't climb out of it. If you are just one-dimensional against an Ohio State defense, they are going to tear you apart. Jack Sawyer pressing from the outside in, not getting too far ahead of Dylan Gabriel, make him create on the outside and let our playmakers make plays. Like, guys, defense travels every week. And this is what's been crazy about this Ohio State team. Their defense has been there. It's just their run game has it. And when they figure that out, I don't think anybody can stop them. And right now, that's what the sports books are telling you.
Well, Cone, I mean, Evan Stewart was the one who gassed him up deep down the field last time. Yeah. He didn't play in this game. That was a huge and listen, I'm not trying to give Oregon an escape hatch here. They just got their ass beat. Make no mistake. I don't think Evan Stewart's changing that. But when you go back and look at the way that game went with Evan Stewart being such a threat deep, what it allowed Trayshawn Holden to do, who had a good game yesterday overall, underneath was big. What it allowed Tez Johnson to do underneath was big. What it allowed in the run game, right? Because it softened up those safeties. I mean, Caleb Downs was basically playing middle linebacker.
Yeah.
That's basically what he was playing.
Man, he reminds me so much of Jabril Peppers when he's out there on the field. He's just so a Swiss Army knife who can do it all. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, when you talk about Cody Simon, we have to talk about Cody Simon's performance in this game. Yeah. He was all over the field. And when the Buckeyes got up early, it was almost like they could just live in this dime package. There was a lot of times where I said, I don't even know if they have linebackers on the field. They're getting pressure with their front four, and their defensive backs are coming downhill so much. And that's the benefit of guys like Caleb Downs who can come in and run fit and really stop anything that Oregon wants to do from a quick pass game and the supplemental run stuff, all the things we talk about with Oregon. So all credit to the Buckeyes, man. That's what pitching a perfect game looks like, and they've done it twice in a row. On the Oregon side, though, when you're the only undefeated team in college football and you're the number 1 overall seed, you can't come out and play that poorly. You just can't come out and have a game like that. And it's only been 12 hours since the loss, and I'm already tired of the excuses on social media. I mean, this idea, and we talk about it in Major League Baseball all the time, if you get a first-round bye, or you more rusty than the team who, very similar to March Madness, has started to get in a groove and you have to play them in the second round. Look, it's football. You got a first-round bye. That means you didn't have to go beat the likes of Tennessee or any of these other teams in the first round. And I don't want to hear any excuses about it. And for the seeding, because everyone wants to talk about the seeding today and how they should have been able to play Boise State or they should have been able to play the SMUs of the world. If your hypothesis is, you know what, we would have made it farther in the tournament had we played easier competition, then to me, you're already unworthy of being the national champion. Yeah, well,
Notre Dame looked fine against Indiana. Right. They didn't play a conference championship game like some of these other teams did. Right. It's an excuse. And again, listen, if you'd have lost by 3 and maybe you came out rusty the first couple drives, maybe I could say that had a little bit to do with it. That's not what happened. You were down 34-8 at halftime. Y'all could have played 4 days after y'all's last game, and we could have had this same result. I was literally thinking to myself watching this first half, this looks like Alabama versus Mercer. Like, this looks like one of those cupcake games that we see. I mean, I think Ohio State maybe jumped out bigger on Oregon than they did on Akron. That's how dominant it was. And it looked like Oregon had no chance. Like you had to have these magical needle-threaded plays. Dylan Gabriel on their touchdown drive before halftime had to scramble out to his left and throw a Willy Wonka Dr. Seuss ball to the sidelines to get it to 4th and 1 just so they could go for it.
Everything looked hard. It all looked hard.
It felt like a 3A school was playing a 6A school.
That's the number one overall seed, which should tell you, because there's so much overreaction and so many referendums on the sport based off a couple blowouts early. That should tell you no one knows what's going to happen when you put 22 guys out on a field and play a football game.
All right, let's get to the chat.
All right, chat, hit that subscribe button. I hope you're having a wonderful new year. We're going to start the day off with Peace Nation. Peace, brother. Says Ohio State deliberately played slow all season in preparation for the college football playoff run. It was to preserve the team, fellas, to preserve the team.
So they sandbagged. That's what you're saying. They tried to Roy Munson everybody in the bowling alley with the pastor and the priest or whatever. Look, when you're beating people to death, and that's what Ohio State did most of the time, you can rest starters, right? We've seen this both ways. I mean, I'm looking yesterday at Arizona State. Cam Scadaboo's played like 1/4 quarter all year. So he's like throwing up halfway through the third quarter. I think it was just a learning process. I mean, I don't think it was, hey, let's keep everything. You don't keep everything close to the vest and just run ISO and lead versus Michigan.
Mm-mm.
Like that's I think you're making that comment in jest, but
losing to Michigan lit a fire under this team.
Yeah,
I mean, let's just go ahead and say it. When you're trying to create legislation about flag planting and Jack Sawyer's out there crying his eyes out, like something changed about this team, and they responded.
Did it light a fire, or just like, hey, maybe we should throw it to Jeremiah Smith?
That's what I'm saying. That's what
I mean. I understand the schematics argument, but then why weren't they beating some of the group of 5 teams they were playing earlier in the season like this? Like from a score standpoint, some of the scores ended up being that bad, but they've never started off the way they have these past 2 games. Do the Buckeyes look like a different football team since they lost to Michigan?
It's a combination of the two, David. I
mean, they have really good players. Yes, that's where they're not going to beat people unless you have really good players. We knew that. But don't they look different since that game?
Oh, they look totally different. I
look
think it's
different.
A combination of both of those things. I think they look different schematically from a when they do it standpoint. They're getting the ball to Jeremiah Smith like right when they show up. I thought the ball when we got off the bus.
I thought their scheme yesterday, and sometimes being so identical that it was the same play, their scheme yesterday reminded me a lot of what they did against Penn State. But they only won that game by what, 7 points on the road?
And they had to get down 10.
They had exactly. 10. They had to get down 10. They weren't beating Penn State in that game with a similar scheme by 40.
No, but I mean, I think yesterday you could have Chip Kelly could have walked up to Dan Lanning on second night and been like, "Hey, we're throwing it deep to Jeremiah Smith," and there's nothing they could have done about it.
Look, if he could go number 1 pick in the draft.
I mean,
would he be the number 1 pick this season?
I'm taking him over everybody.
Here's my question, and again, we talk about I'm gonna say this, and I really, really mean this. Like y'all know, I'm not gonna reach just to show it off, right? I don't dance on a pole for a living. Well, at least I don't anymore. I think that Jeremiah Smith will be the best wide receiver to ever come out of Ohio State. I think he's gonna be the best. I think he's gonna be better than Olave. I think he's the real question is, I mean, guys, yesterday they put a graphic up with Jeremiah Smith next to Terrell Owens and like Calvin Johnson. He's a freshman, dude. He's a You know how we always talk about how, well, in basketball, you can get guys to go from high school to the pros, and that's possible. We're like, man, in college football, very rarely. We brought up Jadeveon Clowney, right? The Andre Smith, I think out of Huffman, could have played in the NFL. Is Jeremiah Smith playing the NFL last year?
You know what's the craziest part about the statement you just made about him possibly being the greatest to come out of there is we're only, 7 months removed from an NFL draft where we said Marvin Harrison Jr. might be the best wide receiver to ever come out of college, period. And now they've already gotten one better. Like, that's insane to me.
He's 6'3", 225. Looking at Chris Carter's face on the sidelines after that first quarter, it just like it was like watching Hercules be like, God, like that dude's strong. You know what I'm saying?
They threw him a corner. Oregon had 3 guys legitimately.
Doesn't matter.
Will was like, no, matter. Whatever. If I'm Will Howard, I'm like, I'm throwing it.
Jeremiah Smith, they can have more
too.
guys on him than an OnlyFans account. It's not going to matter.
When Oregon was in 2-man, right, and he hit Mbuka in the middle, that ball over the linebacker was an absolute dot. If Will Howard playing like that,
like, how do you make that throw, man? Like,
well, that's the scare. What did we say earlier in the year? If Will Howard is making those throws, it's lights out. It's lights out, because that was the big question. Now, was it in I know it was earlier in the game, but some of those throws, I mean, the first ball he threw to Jeremiah Smith, I could have thrown that one with my feet, right? It was just a swing pass. But that throw, a couple of the throws early when it mattered in the Tennessee game, this is what's fascinating to me. I'm watching Drew Aller and Will Howard be better pure passers than Carson Beck. I mean, if Drew Aller's making the throw, I know it was Boise State. I know that. But if Drew Aller is making some of the throws, that throw that Drew Aller hit boy in the back of the end zone on early in that game was an absolute pebble.
Looked like Josh Allen throwing the ball.
This blitz Drew Aller, he'll fall apart.
Well,
just blitz him.
Just look at Quinn Ewers.
Him and Quinn Ewers. Two guys.
All right, let's go one more to the chat, and then we'll move on.
All right, let's go to Tesla Talk. What's up, man? He said, I said Oregon was overrated all year, and yesterday I was correct. Their defense was always questionable to me.
Well, and again, remember, if you donate, it's on topic. Make sure we get those read. I don't want to say that. I watched you play 14 games.
Mm-hmm.
You went 13-1 in the Big Ten. And I know we can talk about opt-outs in bowl games. I understand that. But I've watched the Big Ten whip the SEC's ass. That's what I've watched. You can, and again, I'm from SEC country, man. I'm in Tennessee right now. But the Big Ten is dominating the SEC. And Iowa really should have beat Missouri, if we're going to be honest. It could be even worse. We'll see what happens. I know Duke's in the ACC, but Ole Miss is going to have to put on for the city in that one, which they should with the personnel Duke has after opt-outs. I'm not going to say Oregon is overrated. I'm going to say Ohio State hadn't found themselves yet. Ohio State had the highest ceiling of any team, I think, in college football. Can we agree on that? We said that all year. We're looking at this roster, right? And on defense, yeah, you brought in Caleb Downs, but a lot of those guys were there from Ohio State, and they talked about that yesterday. It's offensively. That's where you spent the money. And hell, McLaughlin's not even playing right now, right? Sarah's little brother, who plays center, who transferred from Bama. So I'm not going to say Oregon is overrated. I think Ohio State is finally playing and hitting their peak, their apex, from a personnel and from a coaching standpoint.
All right, let's go to $5 donation from Good Comms with Trey. What's up, man? He says, Happy New Year, fellas. Wishing you and your families a great 2025. Appreciate that, brother. Let's go to the $5 donation from Sawyer. Says, thank you, at Cone. Thank you for saying Sawyer the right way, and go Buckeyes.
There's another way to say Sawyer. Is it Sawyer?
I just got done watching Lost a couple months ago, and that was one of the characters.
That's how I felt after I watched Lost. Absolutely Lost. All right, speaking of Lost, good God, I wasn't even drinking at the point yesterday when Texas-Arizona State was on, but I felt like I was getting drunker watching that game, not even drinking. This is what I want to say to Texas. Y'all have got to stop playing with y'all's food, man. Y'all got to stop doing it. Y'all did it multiple times throughout the season, during the regular season, and now it's going to cost you. In reality, you probably should have lost yesterday. You should have won, then you should have lost, then you earned the win. I'm not taking anything away from Cam Scataba. It's an amazing performance by him. He should have got the MVP. Sam Leavitt, damn, Auburn got the wrong Michigan State quarterback transfer. That's for sure. I'd take Sam Leavitt with one leg over Peyton Thorne with 3 arms. But when you look at the way this game was, Texas came out and it was bombs over Baghdad. Bombs over Baghdad. And then it was almost like Texas relaxed. It was almost like Texas thought, oh, we've stopped Scatteraboo a couple drives. They can't make a field goal. We just scored on 2 plays and ran a punt back. It's going to be smooth sailing. Let's get ready for Ohio State or Oregon. There's a lack of maturity, I think, on this team that shows its head at different points. And Arizona State, give them all the credit in the world. The most impressive thing that Arizona State did yesterday had nothing to do with Cam Scatteraboo or Sam Leavitt. Had nothing to do with them. Their performances were great. I was shocked. I was not surprised Scadaboo had a good game or Levitt made some plays. I was shocked Arizona State absolutely shut down the run game of Texas. That shocked me. It kept them in the game. Guys, if you take away that punt return and then the first 2 plays of the game, which Quinn, it was a great stalk and go off the wheel, Sark stalk and go package. I mean, it's Night Stalker worthy. It's so good. I mean, he basically pulls a Richard Ramirez from a play calling standpoint. He just sneaks in there and takes all your stuff. You better hope you're not there. But when you look at what this Arizona State defense did, I was absolutely floored that Wisner was a non-factor. Hell, Quinn Ewers the only guy that scored a rushing touchdown really for Texas, if we're going to be honest. But, David, I'll start with you. Can you talk about Texas, then Arizona State a little bit?
First of all, shout out to both of these programs for really delivering us an awesome football game. And it wasn't awesome for 3.5 quarters, but man, it sure turned into a classic. Everything that Kenny Dillingham has done at Arizona State this year, I picked him to finish last in the conference, not only to win that conference, make the college football playoff, but to put on a performance like that. No quit in this team. And I'll continue to say it. I think Cam Scadabo and Tyler Warren, those are my 2 favorite college football players to watch right now. And man, did he deliver. A couple interesting things. Like you talked about, if you take away the big play on the stalk and go and then the punt return for a touchdown, that game Arizona State's defense really responded throughout. And I was surprised just because we just watched Texas run all over Clemson. And I don't think Arizona State's defense is that far superior to Clemson's defense, who we really saw week in and week out throughout the season really deliver. That defense gave up 294 yards of rushing. Yesterday, Arizona State's defense bowed up and shut down that Texas run game, which really said, Quinn Ewers, you're going to have to beat us. That's what really made things interesting down the stretch, combined with Cam Scadabo just being able to deliver on every single front, throwing touchdowns, he's rushing touchdowns, 2-point conversions, whatever you ask the guy to do, he's going to be an NFL player. I'll say this about Texas, though, when it was 4th and long, your season's on the line and you've missed 2 field goals and you put it in Quinn Ewers' hands to go find your best offensive player who's been the most consistent, Golden, he found him in the back of the end zone. Yeah. I just wanted to ask you guys, what do you think there about the blitz? You bring in the blitz for Arizona State on 4th and long like that. You're just exposing yourself on the back end. I understand, like, hey, let's just get after him. Let's pressure him, not give him time to throw the ball. But the blitz was picked up. Now you've given up a touchdown and you lost the game.
Yeah, and this is something that I put out on social media right after it happened. I do not fault Arizona State for blitzing on that play in overtime. I don't fault them for it. Now, you made the 2 mistakes that can't happen. If you're going to bring pressure and that much pressure, you know this, David, Blaine, there's a difference between a 5-man pressure and a 6- and 7-man pressure, right? Depending on what personnels you have and that are out there. If you are going to bring heavy pressure and it gets picked up, you cannot let people run by you in the back end. It's 4th and 15. Wasn't that what it was?
At least 13, yeah.
Yeah, 13 to 15. Okay, that's fine. Even if you just put, which you never do, put everybody on a straight line at 15 yards and say, hey, if they pick this up, just don't let anybody behind you, you can survive it. If you're going to score a touchdown, you know what you're going to have to do? Even if I bring a heavy pressure, you're going to have to catch the ball underneath the 15 yards of the first down marker and then make 1 to 2 of us miss. Mm-hmm. That's what you're going to have to do. We can match coverage out of man, and not just if you stack or you're tight together. We can match it from depth. I'm fine with that. How do you think zone coverage was invented? It's really nothing but matching out of man just in a certain spot. So I've got no problem. If you're going to bring that pressure, your ass either has to get there or keep it underneath you. Not only did it get picked up, which the offensive line was the MVP of that play. Make no mistake, the offensive line was the reason that worked. But if you're going to not get there, you cannot have people run by you. And that's exactly what happened at Arizona State. I saw it unfold in real time. My wife was sitting right next to me. The minute I saw the leverage and the depth of the Arizona State DBs post-snap, when the ball was literally going back to Quinn, I looked in the slot and said, it's a touchdown. It's a touchdown. So I don't hate the method, but it was absolute horrific execution, not only by the blitzers, but by the people in the back end as well. So I would blitz Quinn Ewers. I would show pressure all night to Quinn. Hell, Cone, you went on got your PhD dissertation about it, right? We went through the plays. He struggles to be able to communicate through pre-snap pressures and then post-snap developments, right? So I get it, but God, you can't get beat deep in the back and get 10 yards. Congratulations. Here's your L.
So, Blaine, what about the targeting call?
Yeah, who cares?
We got to talk about the targeting call.
You're getting sued. All right, Arizona State, if it's me up. I've never seen a more blatant targeting in my life. In my life. We might do a documentary about what is targeting because we got to figure this out. How does that not get called? Is it because of Texas? I just don't know. You reviewed it too. You went and looked at it. Tell me how it's not targeting. Trust me, I'm not the biggest guy who comes out here. Oh, that's definitely roughing the passer. That's definitely targeting. That is letter of the law targeting.
Well, he's a defenseless receiver. He's a defenseless receiver, and there's helmet-to-helmet contact. And all of this talk about, well, yeah, that was targeting, but you just can't call that in that moment. Change the rule. Can we please get this rule figured out? We can't do this thing of, well, that's a really big moment in a college football playoff game, so you can't call it there. That's teach tape for targeting. Now, I hate the rule, so I don't mind it not being called. But if it's going to be in the rule book, then you have to call that. No, Jake?
No, look, you made my point. Think about it. This is why I like making comparisons and analogies. Think about this in any other sport. Do you think that if Duke was playing, I don't know, let's say Arkansas, right, in the Final Four, and there was a flagrant foul as the guy was dribbling the ball down the court, do you think they would just say, nah, can't call it. Can't call it in this moment? Can you imagine, in any other sport this happening? No. In baseball, can you imagine, guy hitting a game-winning grand slam, right, but he stepped on the plate when he swung? Then be like, no, well, yeah, it's against the rules, but we can't call in this moment. You want to know what it proves if you say, oh, yeah, it was a foul, it was a penalty, but we can't call in this moment? That means the rule sucks.
Thank you.
That means the rule sucks. You want to know why? Because it does.
Yeah.
It sucks. It's the worst. And guess what? I don't want to just offer complaints or grievances. I'm about solutions. All right? Basically, the customer service of college football. You call me with a problem, I got a solution for you. Here's what we do. I'm fine with having a targeting. I'm fine with that. But I think we need to do what college basketball does. And I've said this before any of these other guys came out in the media and said it. Now everybody wants to say it, right? You need a flagrant 1 and a flagrant 2. All right? A flagrant 1. Because I tell you, Arizona State's safety being out for the first half of that game was bullshit because of the hit on the Iowa State quarterback before. That is the worst. You have flagrant 1 and flagrant 2. Flagrant 1 is, accidental, not obviously blatantly targeting. We've seen guys blatantly do it and try and take guys out, right? That's a flagrant 2. I'm fine with that person being kicked out of the game, even missing a half the next one if it's a flagrant 2. If it's a flagrant 1 and it's like that, it's a 15-yard penalty. Nobody's kicked out of the game. It's just a personal foul penalty. That's it, right? And then if you get 2 flagrant 1s, then we can look at maybe kicking you out of the game. But guess what, David? That's got nothing to do with what happened. It was targeting. It was. I don't love it. He hit him with his face up. You want to see what you got to hit? Yeah, the player was defenseless, but why don't they ever call it on offense?
Yeah, I mean, it clearly wasn't spearing. Didn't we have a spearing call where it was just like, are you lowering your head? Again, I agree with you. Let's just play football, Well, and I mean, if we get in situations where we are lowering the head and spearing people, maybe we can look at that. But
you want to know why I think they didn't call it? Because do you remember early in the game on that interception by Arizona State? They reviewed targeting on the safety from Arizona State.
Hit him with his body. Yeah.
Where he hit him with his body up. I think they called it even Stevens, which is still wrong.
How is that even Stevens?
I think they didn't call it on one. We see this happen in other sports all the time. We see it happening all the time. If they're going to let them play a certain way, which to me, I don't think I hate both of them, right? Because I'm a defensive guy, and they never call offensive targeting, even though I watch Cam Scadaboo and Ashton Genty lower their head like they're about to batter a front door of a castle. It just, to me, we need to try and define the rule as much as possible, but I don't know how you sit there and look at him hit a defenseless guy in the face with his face, and it's not targeting. I thought it was, but look, there's a lot
again,
of
I am glad to see that a game of that magnitude didn't get won or lost based on that call. Well, I guess it kind of did, but the Arizona State didn't beat Texas in that game just because of that call. But again, then why have it? Because that's clearly targeting, and all you've done now is open up the door to, oh, this is big brand biased and SEC biased, and when we really shouldn't be talking about that because we had an amazing football game. And I'll tell you what, in addition to the way Arizona State's defense really propped themselves up and responded to those couple big plays at the beginning, Sam Leavitt threw the football well enough down the field to be able to open up Cam Scatterboo throughout most of that game. And I'll be honest, Arizona State took Texas to double overtime when I thought their short yardage play calling was pretty poor. I know that's crazy to think. It was not great play calling, man. I mean, just running the football up the middle on 3rd and 4s and 3rd and 3s. It's like, you got to have some better answer than that.
The red zone play calling was atrocious.
Red zone too, yeah.
Atrocious.
In the third quarter, it was really bad.
And then you need a Cam Scatterboo Hail Mary from the running back position that was underthrown. Wide receiver made a great play on the ball just to get you back in the football game.
Yeah, that was.
If you had unblocked guys on 4th and 2, you wanted to go up there and run in the B gap against Texas.
That's why Scatterboo was pissed off. That's why he was pissed off on the sidelines.
Exactly.
It wasn't that nobody was blocking; it's that you're running him into the heavy cavalry, dude.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this. I'll tell you this much. I'll take Sam Leavitt over Quinn Ewers any day, buddy. I'll take him over Quinn Ewers any day. Sam Leavitt kept them alive so many times, even on plays that ended up in incompletions. I'm telling you guys, right? Sam Leavitt, and I can't remember what year he is. I think he's a sophomore?
A freshman.
So he's a freshman. Problem. Absolute problem. If I'm a wide receiver, like, guys, and remember, Jordan Tyson didn't play in this game.
I know.
Like, you talk about missing a piece.
Sam Leavitt's a freshman.
Dude, he's an absolute stud. And, he's got that dog in him, too. That run he made on 3rd and 12 in the red zone, that's just you got to let him hang around sometimes, David. You know this. Sometimes you got to walk in the room naked and let him hang.
Sometimes you just got to do it, man.
But, all right, let's get to the chat.
All right, let's go to the Hog. He says, guys, why wasn't the hit on Bond not targeting? Then it looked pretty targeting to me.
What I love is the explanation. I actually feel bad for, like, Matt Austin and, like, Gene Steratore and some of these other guys that got to come in there. Because on one hand, the ref, those are your boys. Like, that's your squad. Like, those are your guys. It's like the people in accounting take care of the people in accounting. Right? Like the head HR rep is going to take care of everybody that's in HR with them. Like, you're having to go on there, and sometimes they'll be like, well, Brock, I do agree with you. That was kind of tight, but I see why he did it. Listening to their explanations, here's what I saw on the one on Isaiah Bond. I don't care if you hit him with your shoulder or whatever. I thought the rule was if you launch to a defensive player and you hit them anywhere other than the stomach, I'm talking about here, they've called targeting. So just like Matt Walsh asks, what is a woman? What is targeting? What is it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, really, what is it? I feel like we know a little bit more about what a catch actually is now, right? With surviving the ground and the amount of feet you have to have in and bobbling and did he secure it? Sometimes it gets a little bit iffy. But with targeting, it just seems like it's like one of those paintings that just nobody understands, right? You have people that pretend like they do. You have people that are like, oh, well, he was being pragmatic and he was trying to use cubes and brushes and stuff. You don't know what that means. I feel like it's just a canvas of, well, it could be, it couldn't be. I don't think you can define it. I really don't.
I just think if you hit somebody with your shoulder, it should never be targeting.
Even if you hit them in that. See, that's where it gets complicated. If you're hitting with your shoulder in their head, or you're hitting with your head in their shoulder, there's too many different ways to interpret targeting right now. I mean, Blaine, you played wide receiver. One of the things that makes football the game that we know and love is watching a wide receiver come over the middle with his eyes on the ball, trying to catch that, and a defensive back trying to dislodge the football so that there's not a big gain. That's what makes football the game it is. I understand not wanting to see people's careers or even lives be ended from playing this sport, but man, at some point we got to play the game.
I miss the days that you had to question your life when you went across the middle.
Yeah.
Like, you had to question when you're up in the air. It's like, all right, this is it. This is us. We'll see where we go.
Well, it was like a badge of honor. Like, if you had the balls to do it, you're like, all right, I'm watching Hines Ward on the sideline for Arizona say, you want to talk about a guy that go across the middle?
Yeah.
Like some of these old school wide receivers. Here, what if we made the rule this simple? What if you can't target unless you leave your feet?
If you're the defensive player?
If you're the defensive player, if you don't leave your feet, you cannot target, right? But like the one against Isaiah Bond, and I get why the defensive player did it. He was trying to dislodge the ball because the offensive player went in the air. What if there was a rule that if the offensive player does not leave his feet, if you leave your feet and spear or jump or launch, right, and you make that contact high, I'm not talking about jumping over the pile to hit a running back, but y'all know what I'm saying. What if it was that simple? What if it was that simple?
Hey, on that play there, that was an intercept. That was the interception play, right?
Yes.
So in that case, the other player had control of the football, and then right behind him, sort of bang, bang, that's when the hit happens. If that was called targeting, is that an interception and you mark off the yardage backwards for
automatic first down for Texas?
Because technically they say, even though you've intercepted the football already, the play it's not a post-foul play.
Yeah, well, just like if the ball's in the air and an offensive lineman is holding a defensive lineman and it gets intercepted, they're not going to give him that interception. I don't think, now again, could they say that it had already, I think they may have to review it to see when it changed possession. That would be the only way. Because again, you can have a pick and then somebody blindside blocks on a return and you still get the ball. So that's a great question. But again, guys, why don't we just make it this simple? If the offensive player does not leave his feet and you leave your feet and launch and you hit him in a high area, that's targeting. If the offensive player leaves his feet and you leave your feet, I don't care. He's not defenseless to me if he's going to get the ball. You're trying to make me lose my job. My job is for you not to get that ball. So what am I supposed to do? Let you catch it and then grab you and hope you drop it? I don't think that's the way the rule should be interpreted. But just like, guys, if an offensive player lowers his helmet and then you have to lower yours, it shouldn't be targeting. So why would we not go the other way? If a guy leaves his feet on offense to go catch a ball and I leave my feet to go hit him, that's just part of it. We both left our feet. We both signed the paper, right? I think it could be that simple.
There's two things quickly. One, I hate the word defenseless. Look, dog, we're always defenseless. All right?
Yeah, you don't have a sword.
We're offense.
We're on offense. We're defenseless all the time. And two, just take out targeting. I'm done with it. I don't want to have these conversations anymore.
Well, you can have both. You don't have to take it out. What you do is you make it harder for it to be targeting, or you got to do one of two things. Either you make it harder to be targeting and you have a flagrant 1 or a flagrant 2, or you start calling it on offense, which they're not going to do. They're not going to do that.
I think yesterday, that call yesterday was a prime example of how referees are so motivated by the harshness of the contact, right? Like that was the definition of targeting. Helmet on helmet. The guy's he's quote unquote defenseless because he's in the middle of turning up field, but it wasn't one of those hits like we saw from, who was it? Jackson in the Georgia-Texas game where you just blast somebody. If that had been a harder hit, I think they would have called targeting, and they shouldn't be basing whether or not they're calling this foul on how hard the hit is.
Well, and the players recognize it too. Watch every time somebody hits somebody hard, the first thing the defensive player does is get up and look around because he thinks he's getting thrown out of the game, regardless of whether he thinks it's targeting or not. Like hard hits, it's like, oh no, you hit him too hard. Like that. That's like going to a Victoria's Secret model show and be like, oh no, take her out. She looks way too hot. Like that's the whole point.
That's happening these days too, I think.
Like you can't use your helmet as you can't use your helmet.
She's not fat enough.
You can't use your helmet as a weapon, guys.
Yeah, but it's
like we have a guy called Weapon X.
It's like, hey, we're gonna take away the helmets and just give them guns. That's what we're gonna do. All right, let's go to the chat quickly and let's move on.
Let's go to Montano 808 Beats. He says these rules are actually causing more egregious injuries. Guys do not know how to tackle now.
Well, I told Reed, my wife, this yesterday on the call that's supposed to be targeting. She was like, "What are you supposed to do? Break his legs?" I was like, "That's a great point." Like, so I'm so like the hit on Rocco Beck, the Iowa State quarterback that got Shamari Simmons, the targeting. What do you want me to do? Just go hit him in the knees? You want me just to snap him in half? Yeah, because guess what? That's a penalty too. He'll be in a wheelchair the rest of his life. You know what? The hardest hits I ever took were in my chest. And most of the times when I didn't see them, guess what? Sometimes you get hit so hard it doesn't hurt. You know what hurts? Hitting the ground after you get hit. That's typically, most guys don't get knocked out when they get hit. They get knocked out when their head hits the back of their head hits the ground. That's when they get knocked out.
Like the two worst things are in football is one, someone landing on you, and two, getting rolled up.
Oh, getting rolled up sucks.
And losing.
Those are the absolute.
And losing. Yes.
Losing hurts the worst.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're gonna get back to the chat here in a second, guys. Let's move on here. Coney, you wanna preview this Texas Ohio State game?
Yeah. Look, boys, the Cotton Bowl is now set. This one's going to be in Texas, and the early line right now, it opened at -5 Buckeyes. I'm looking at it right now at -6, so it's gone up another point. Buckeyes favored over Texas, and the point line is 53.5. How you guys feeling about this one?
I picked Texas to win the whole thing. So I would love to sit here and tell you that I think Texas has the advantage. Ohio State's going to regress. But the lack of Texas's ability to run the ball against Arizona State, and I get it, they're going to get up, I think, more for Ohio State, right, than Arizona State. I know there's been some injuries there. But if you think it was tough sledding against Arizona State in the run game, you're basically walking into Mordor. I just, in my mind, I am seeing Texas not be able to run the ball and Ohio State just absolutely folding Quinn Ewers. Like, if the question I think becomes, if you're Jim Knowles, do I need to pressure him or can we just get there? Because there's been times where this Texas offensive line has struggled. And this, I think, is going to be the best D-line they've seen. With all due respect to Georgia, they've got some absolute dogs, pun intended. I mean, when you look at these cats Ohio State has, just how big they are, how well they move laterally, if Jim Knowles does not have to manufacture pressure, if he can get there with 4 eventually, or at least press the pocket with 4 and keep guys in coverage, I'm not seeing, as good as Sark is, as many tricks and tomfoolery and hoodwinkedness that Steve Sarkisian has, I don't think Quinn Ewers is going to have time. And I know Texas defense is really good. I think their best shot is for this game to be low scoring and ugly, right? I think that's their best chance because against this Ohio State team, I don't know what you do right now. You got to try and take away Jeremiah Smith, but then you look up and there's Carnell Tate and there's Egbuka and there's those 2 backs that they can use out of the backfield to catch the ball. I just think Ohio State right now is the best team in college football by head and shoulders, and I'm just not seeing it, man. I think Ohio State covers this one pretty easy. I hate to say it. I hope I'm wrong, but I don't know what you do to Ohio State right now outside of poisoning their breakfast. I don't know.
Blaine, the Buckeyes, that's your horse, man. You picked a good horse right before the tournament started, so I think I know how you're feeling about this one.
Yeah, it's a real Seabiscuit situation over here, I'm going to be honest. I'll tell you this right now. If Texas comes out and looks like that again, it's going to be belt to ass pretty quick in this football game. I just – one, it's just glorious to sit here and revel in my decision that I made. Remember,
all right, dude, we get it. You picked Ohio State. All right, we get it.
Picked Ohio State before the season started. Caught a lot of hell after my playoff prediction from a lot of people. I just don't see those people right now talking a lot of ish. Surprising to me. If you're soft, just say it. The only way I think Texas wins this game is, one, you get to Will Howard, and Will Howard has to have a bad day. Will Howard has to play kind of like he played earlier in the year, not great, turning the over behind the line when it comes to 2nd and long, 3rd and long. If they're on schedule, and if you're Texas, you need something to go well early. You can't get down 14, 17 against these guys and expect to come back. And look, can Quinn Ewers show up? Does Quinn Ewers have enough dog in him to beat Ohio State? Because that's the question at the end of the day. Quinn Ewers in that game, I'm sorry.
Where he transferred from, by the way.
Yeah, cannot step on a guy's throat and finish it. But I know a team that's coming to play them that will. If you play around against these guys, it's going to be a real older brother in the driveway playing basketball situation pretty quick.
It's just, again, and this is where I think the lack of foot speed and creative ability is going to show its face with Quinn Ewers. Like Will Howard, look, he's not the fastest guy, but he's athletic enough to keep a play alive, maybe make a guy from Texas miss. Even Drew Aller, as goofy as he is, as much as he looks like a giraffe on roller skates, he's got enough of that Jameis in him where he can make a guy underestimate him with the ball, right? That's all he does. He makes you underestimate him with the ball. I just think Quinn Ewers in the pocket, even yesterday, guys, like go look at some of the early pressures Arizona State had in the second half. If one guy gets past the line, Quinn Ewers is going down like a sweet muffin. And he's great when he's upright. He's incredible when he's upright. That's when he's at his best. But so many things have to go right for Quinn Ewers to be right compared to a quarterback that can create, right? That's why I think Sam Leavitt was able to keep them in the game, Arizona State, because he could create like that. I just do not see, this Texas offensive line consistently dominating these guys in the run game enough to slow down the pass rush. And then B, when they do throw it, they're going to have to go max pro, which takes at least two guys out of routes. So if you're going to try and beat Ohio State with two-man routes, good luck and no run game. I'm just not seeing it. I could see Texas's defense holding up for a while, but eventually that dam is going to break. That's the way I'm seeing it right now.
I hear everything you're saying about Quinn Ewers, but take yesterday, for example, when they couldn't get anything going on the ground, it was Quinn Ewers who ran in a touchdown, right? So he does have the ability to be able to make plays with his feet. And look, we've seen some of the greatest quarterbacks in NFL history be very, very slow, but they move well in the pocket. And I mean, we've been talking for 2 seasons now about, hey, if Quinn Ewers has a clean jersey, Texas probably won the football game. If his jersey's not clean, then they probably lost. That kind of has gotten thrown up in the air a little bit these past few games because we've seen some teams be able to get to him, but just not consistently throughout the entire game. The Buckeyes right now, they feel like that team in 2015 that won the national championship. Remember when they came on really strong at the end of the year? They're down to their third string quarterback. Cardale Jones is playing, and it was in a different fashion because it was more of the Zeke Elliott show, but still 59-0 over Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship. They're beating Alabama in the college football playoff. They're starting to feel like that team. So when we sit here and say the last 2 games they played, they look like the best team in college football. Yes, anybody who's watched the games can say that. My question is, can this be replicated for another 2 football games? And for Texas, almost losing to Arizona State, will that be the thing that jolts them awake, similar to what the Buckeyes had against Michigan? Because remember, these 2 teams have a common opponent. I was at the Michigan-Texas game. Texas throttled Michigan and could have beaten them worse, and that's a team that did beat the Buckeyes on the road. Is there any thought to, hey, maybe this is the game for Texas almost losing to Arizona State that gets them jolted awake?
Well, it's the way I'm looking at it, it's like this. Does Ohio State have to play bad for Texas to win? Or if Texas plays really good and Ohio State plays really good, can Texas win? Not against that version of Ohio State I've seen the last 2 games. No, I don't think so. I think if Ohio State plays really well, they are a more complete team than what Texas is. Not that Texas is bad or that Texas doesn't deserve to be there. I just think we're seeing another. Do you think Texas, after that they got up early, just kind of said, all right, well, we're going to roll Arizona State and kind of let their guard down a little bit? Maybe they'll be more in tune this game. That's a possibility. Sark's going to throw everything he has, right, at this game. I don't know, Cone. Like, I'm just not seeing – I think these 2 teams are different, man. Like,
I still think it's going to come down to the line of scrimmage, right? I understand all the skill players. I understand the way that Buckeyes have been getting Jeremiah Smith the football. But Blaine, what's perplexing to me about Texas is I watch them rush for 292 against a good Clemson defense, but then in 2 performances against Georgia, 2 games, they combined for 50 rushing yards in 2 games. And then yesterday against Arizona State, you have 50 rushing yards. That should have been the team you had 292 against, not the Clemson defense. I'm looking at like how much can they run the football, and on the other side of that, with Texas's defensive line, are the Buckeyes going to be able to get a run game going enough, or is this just a situation where it's like, let's don't make the same mistake we did again against Michigan? We're going to get Jeremiah Smith on arrow routes, and we're going to get Mbuka the sail routes as much as we possibly can.
Ohio State needs to walk into every football game and say, how many times can I get Jeremiah Smith the football? I don't know if you're Chip Kelly, that should have been the strategy the entire year. You're not reinventing the wheel here. Look at them. But I do think Texas, go through their schedule and look at the real ones they've played and look how they've ran the football against Georgia, 2 games. You didn't run the football at all. You played an Arizona State team that defense is okay. Not great against the run. They stuffed you for 4 quarters. These things that are about to come down from Ohio State, it's different. Like it's legitimate NFL talent from D-line to linebackers to corners to the back end. And what Caleb Downs does from a leadership, athletic standpoint, top 5 pick, in my opinion, he takes everything away from the middle of the field. So at this point, who can you rely on the outside if you're Texas? You have a couple good pieces, but are they good enough? And I'm sorry, Quinn Ewers, 1, he can't run it all, and 2, he has bad feel in the pocket. He has bad feel in the pocket, and he's not good at picking up pressures. And if you do that against Ohio State, they are going to eat you for lunch. Everything has to be perfect for Quinn Ewers to play good. Will Howard, it doesn't have to be because of the weapons that he has around them. And another big surprising thing, I didn't see Arch Manning at all in this game. No short yard packages or anything like that, which is surprising to me. And as good as Texas has been all year, their red zone play calling on offense has been mediocre. It's been mediocre. Go look at the numbers.
Well,
they're not good in the red zone.
I'm just worried about the offensive line, man. Like, if I'm a Texas fan, I am horrified at the offensive line right now. Like, because look, I mean, Banks went down in the game holding that same ankle. If he can't play, really, and you got to put Gooseby out there that was already in there for your starting other tackle, dude, what JT and Tyleek and Blazer and Laser and Taser and the rest of them are going to do to you up front, there's not going to be – Caleb Downs is going to sit in the middle. He's going to play a game called Let's Find Gunnar Helm, because whenever Quinn Ewers needs that security blanket, who did he go to? Right? He went to Gunnar Helm.
Which wasn't even until the second half, right? Did he not have a target in the first half?
It was nuts, Cone. I couldn't believe it. I'm telling you, they got up 14-0. They ran that punt back. Because remember, they should have blocked the first punt. They should have scored 2 special teams. I don't know. Oh, boy, closed his eyes. I was a special teams coordinator for a long time. You want to know what that was? We used to do a drill where you would come and block the punt. You would start out from your stance, and I would make sure your eyes were open. Because a lot of guys do this. They close their eyes when they get there because there's about to be contact. And all old boy did was sidestep them, right? So I think Texas looked at that. They were shutting down Scattaboo. Sam Levitt was running like a kid from an abusive home environment. And they're like, you know what? We're going to beat Arizona State to death. Let's put some stuff on tape. Wisner did nothing yesterday. And it really wasn't his fault. They were getting cooked by Arizona State's defensive line. And, guys, they outweighed Arizona State's defensive line by like an average of 30 pounds. Guess what's about to happen to you? Not only are Ohio State guys as big as you or bigger, they are faster than Arizona State. That last run that Quinn Ewers had for a touchdown, you remember that touchdown that he had? That's not happening against Ohio State. It's not going to happen. What Quinn can't do is see pressure and just fall down. Throw the ball away, dog. 2nd and 10 is a whole lot different than 2nd and 15. And if you do that and they get you behind the chains and you let Jack Sawyer and that other exciting white they have coming off the bench like he's in the wine aisle of a Kroger, I forgot what his last name was, you're going to be in big, big trouble.
Well, to Blaine's point about Texas's rushing attack against other defenses this year, I mean, let's just take Michigan and Oklahoma both, for instance, right? Those are 2 solid defenses. Texas ran for over 140 against Michigan, over 175 against Oklahoma. Now, you can say that the offenses for both of those teams were so inept that the defenses never really had a chance, and that's what allowed Texas to run the football effectively. But still, they were able to run the ball, and again, 292 against Clemson. I've seen Texas at times be able to run the football effectively to open up the pass game for Quinn Ewers against really good defenses. Then I've seen them face really good defenses and rush for 20 yards. Which one are we going to get? Because they're not built in the same way as Oregon, even when Oregon was down 24-0 and they had minus 16 yards rushing, I still wasn't panicking because their offense is built like that to be able to throw quick game all over the field, then hit you deep and come back at any moment. Texas, to a certain extent, it's like they're their best when they are running the football effectively.
Well, that's what Sark wants to do, right? He wants to do what Lane wants to do. He wants to do what Heupel wants to do. I mean, a smart OC realizes that if you got a strong run game, you can build everything off that. Even if you want to throw it more, which is what Will Stein does. The point you bring up, Cone, is a great one. They can make up for not having a run game because their quick passing game is so good and they use it so often. They can supplement it. Texas really doesn't do that, right? So in order to have balance or to keep a defense on their heels, to set the tone to that defense, establishing the run game just wears you down mentally. It's a mental thing. It is, we can line up and do the simplest thing. Snap the ball to the quarterback. He can just hand it to the running back, and we can have success, as opposed to snapping the ball, quarterback having to go through his reads, getting into routes, offensive line having to pick up pass rushers, this, that, and the other. Without that balance, it's just like, look, the Golden State Warriors are at their best when, not just when they're making threes. What allows them to make the threes? Their ability to drive and the ability to rebound. It is that versatility that opens up the other big stuff. And at a lot of points, Texas hasn't had it. And if you don't have it in this game, they're going to murder you because their offenses can score. And to your point, David, look, you're right. Eventually, they ran the ball well against Michigan. Eventually, they ran the ball against Oklahoma. But I think it's a little bit of a different state of mind as a player on either side of the ball when I know that other offense could not score if we gave them 5 downs. Like, I just think when you look at Ohio State and the pressure they put on you, because if you don't go score, oh God, here comes Jeremiah Smith and the rest of the get-along gang as they walk their way up the yellow brick road to go score a touchdown.
I do two things. One, I think from a Michigan standpoint, why they ran so well against Michigan, because Michigan's defense was on the field the entire game. The entire game. I just think from a roster standpoint, there's an astronomical difference between Ohio State and Oklahoma. Just from an NFL talent on your defense.
Offensively, for sure.
Yeah, I'm just saying that Oklahoma team didn't give up a touchdown against Alabama, and Texas beat them like 34-3 in a rivalry game too. That was my only point there.
I know, but it's not hard to figure out Alabama at this point. I promise you that. With the way they're playing, we could probably get 8 guys and give up 14. I mean, to be honest, but I'm just saying what Ohio State does is it's not pretty, it's not cute. They meet you anywhere you want to meet and fist fight you for 10 rounds.
Which we've come a long way in 3 weeks for saying that they might be soft.
They got beat up.
We're saying that they might be soft and Ryan Day might get fired.
They got beat up in front of – Ryan Day got beat up in front of his wife and kids.
That's what I'm saying.
That's what it was. Them. You went to Universal Studios. You had a little bit too much to drink before y'all went to Harry Potter World. Some guy you thought was talking ish as you were walking by. You started talking it back to him, and you got beat up in front of your wife and kids.
And now you have a buzz cut like Edward Norton in American History X.
You've been doing push-ups. You've got a Bowflex. You're now getting ready because you realize you have to regain your honor. Now you've got to go find somebody in Harry Potter World that's close to your size that you got to not only beat him up, you got to beat him up back. You got to send a message. All right, whether it's by the tilt-a-whirl, whether it's by the Ferris wheel, whether it's by some sort of Hogwarts ride that I'm not smart enough to remember, you've now got to regain the honor in front of your wife and kids so they can feel safe around you again. What if somebody breaks in the house late at night? Daddy got his ass whipped by a guy that was 5'9" with no bicepts. Like, how are you going to protect the house? We got to rely on the dogs now. Like, why do we have a German Shepherd and a Mastiff?
One, you can't tell. I'm not going to Rainbow Land. And you can't make me. And 2, it's just like, it's not only you lost to Michigan, right? It was everything that surrounded it afterwards, right? Nick Saban talking about your fans. Kirk Herbstreit talking about your fans. Ryan this team's a failure. We created a monster. We created a villain in the lab. Lex Luthor.
Did Ryan Day get bullied into? Did he get bullied into being good? Like, sometimes this has happened. This is why.
But my question is, like, can that be replicated? That like the change that came from emotion like that, can that be replicated for another 2 games in the college football playoff? Or is there any complacency that sits in and say, yeah, now we've proven the world twice in a row that we're the best team, and all of a sudden you blink once and Texas beats you by 3?
No, look, if you fart during the spelling bee in 3rd grade in front of everybody, nobody forgets.
Did my mom tell you that?
Yeah, no, that actually happened to me, but I ended up winning the spelling bee. I had to. It's just like Ryan Day. It was the same thing. Like, you got embarrassed so much. Now I've got to be able to spell Acapulco. All right, or transcontinental.
So to put a button on it, Jake has them covering the -6. Blaine, you like the -6, or is this line going to go up more to over a touchdown?
-6, David. I'm taking him at 2 tutties. 2. Why wouldn't I?
You're buying up.
Why? Tell me why I shouldn't.
No, look, I don't think you're crazy.
I
don't think you're crazy.
Because
the button up logical one of the group.
Because it's playoff football, which I've been seeing a blowout in every game except for one.
Yeah. All right. Let's get to the chat. Then I want to talk about this Notre Dame Georgia game a little bit.
All right, let's go to a $5 donation from Mr. G. What's up, fellas? He says, guys, I'm worried about Quinn Ewers. I don't know if he's good enough to beat Ohio State. Do you think we're going to see more of Arch Manning in this game?
No, unless he gets hurt, which could happen. Okay, like I wouldn't put it past. You see what Ohio State? That's another thing. They're not just beating you; they're hurting your best players. Like Dylan Sampson, nope. Jordan James, here's a quarter and a half. Oh God! And he's out of the game. Like that's so. I would not put it past to see somebody running around with Quinn Ewers' head halfway through the first quarter for Ohio. Probably Jack Sawyer. That would be the guy. Speaking of lost, if the plane went down, like that's the guy you're looking to. I don't try. Like Blaine said, so many things have to go perfect for Quinn Ewers to work. I just don't think consistently it will. Like those plays Dylan Gabriel made yesterday, extending the play. Quinn Ewers isn't making that play in this game. You just better hope you catch Ohio State in a blitz and that he replaces the blitz with the ball. That's the only way I think you're going to get him out of it. But Quinn Ewers hasn't done a good job of that. He sees the rush. Oh no, I'm going down. Right? I'm with you, Mr. G. I'd be nervous. I picked y'all to win it, so I'm right there with you.
All right, let's go to Ben. What's up, Ben? He says, if Texas wins this game, how do they win, and what's the final score?
If Texas wins?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Quinn Ewers doesn't get sacked.
Will Howard does.
They rush for over 100 yards.
Yeah.
Will Howard turns the football over.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it. And you better make field goals. Like, again, I could have told you a guy with the name of Auburn was going to blow it in crunch time.
Guys, I could have told you. Over at 51.5.
Oh, I saw that.
And it just went from great. Like, look, we got 17 points in the first quarter to terrible. It got down to 39.5 for a live bet. I'm like, I'm cooked. And it was cash out like $200. I was like, I'm so screwed. I just waited. And that last field goal I had at 51.5, he'd have made that. It would have been 51. I would have been sick.
Yeah.
But the overtime touchdown gave you the hit.
Oh, yeah. The first touchdown.
Yeah. Ended up at 70.
Yeah. Let's go to Aaron. What's up? He says, I'm a dog, and Ohio State is the most talented team in America. Only coach that has a chance to take them down. It's our Darth Lord, possible Kirby Smart. Even then, though, we'll see.
Look,
Nope.
You better hope Gunnar Stockton's him.
College football fans overreact instantly more than any other fan base or any other sport. We're only 3 weeks removed from saying, is this team soft and should Ryan Day get fired? Let's just keep seeing it. If I'm the Buckeyes, keep your head down. Don't take any pats on the butt.
For sure.
Don't look at any media. Sure. Treat it like you're still underappreciated and you're still the underdogs in this tournament. Yeah. If you can possibly do that. Well,
speaking of dogs, obviously, with what went on the terrorist attack, our condolences go out to everybody. It's just absolutely sickening that, they had to postpone the game, which I think, look, if I saw some people saying, well, this is what they want to disrupt our way a lot. Well, I would much rather you make sure there's no other bombs or another terrorist attack's not going to happen, right? Because that would be even worse. I think it was the smart thing, obviously, to make sure you got it covered up. They're going to play today, but just an absolutely awful event. People are sick, man. Like, It's just you can't even go on Bourbon Street now without worrying somebody's going to drive a truck down there full speed and hop out with a gun. Just absolutely sickening. But as far as this game goes, I mean, Blaine, where are you sitting right now? I think it truly is a pick 'em. I don't know what to expect from Gunnar Stockton. I don't know if Mike Bobo is going to call it conservative, right? I know he's probably just going to try and test their mettle early to see if they can run the ball. They'll get Gunnar Stockton on the move. They'll run their sprint outs and try and run pick plays, especially if they get in the red zone. But how much is Riley Leonard in this Notre Dame? How much is Riley Leonard going to run today, Blaine? How much do you think?
Are you talking about design runs, or are you talking about just creating in the pocket?
Design. I know he's going to – the scramble drill is going to be the scramble drill, but just design, run, Q power, Q counter, power read, those type things.
Well, you're going to have to. I mean, somewhat what has hurt, the Georgia Kirby Smart coach defense a little bit, if anything. It's been – and not only a guy who can run, but a guy who's a true dual threat. I mean, he can run, he can
do both enough.
Pass at the same time. And I saw some people, come out and like, well, Georgia, when it comes to explosive runs, they've given up a lot this year. Look, what you get against Indiana and that 95-yard touchdown run with Love, who's an absolute dog, I'll give you that. That's not happening against Georgia. No. It's not going to happen. I mean, I'm not going to tell you some lie, some myth, but what Notre Dame has to do, to be honest, is stay on schedule. Riley Leonard has to use his feet and they have to lean on their defense a little bit. And at the end of the day, man, when I look at this game, these teams are fairly evenly matched up. And I kind of said the same thing about Ohio State. It's the same thing the way Georgia is and the way Kirby Smart's built this football team. He built it around not only just the quarterback position, but if something happens, his roster and his team is good enough to come back and win a football game or stay in a football game at least. And, I always kind of look at a way a team reacts after a big injury, especially at the quarterback position. No one wants to see Carson Beck get hurt. It's terrible. We all know that. But this team got up for Gunnar Stockton. They played a little bit different, just from almost an effort and just a physical. And you saw certain guys, certain leaders on defense stand up in moments when they have to. And it's a different feel with Gunnar. I mean, you had Carson. It's finesse. I mean, one of the Cavender twins drives a Lamborghini. It's all Hollywood. Now you got a guy who drives a pickup, who goes out and works the farm every day.
Shane Falco.
He gets done what he needs to get done. That grittiness at quarterback, which you have with the mailman and Stetson Bennett. Trust me, look, Marcus Freeman still has to prove it to me in a big game. You beat Indiana, but you were better than them. I need to see you go toe-to-toe with the best. And is this Georgia team we're used to seeing? No. I mean, they're more finesse, if anything. But I promise you, they're going to be ready for this moment. And, fellas, to be honest with you, I like Georgia in this game.
Well, Cone, to that point, one, how much are you expecting Gunnar Stockton from a throwing standpoint? How much you think Mike Bobo is going to give him early in this game? Like, if you go down and you have to create plays, obviously you're going to have to do things through the air. But I am a firm believer, even though I'm a defensive guy, I think the team runs through the head coach and the quarterback, and they take on that identity. Do you think, to Blaine's point, Gunnar Stockton being kind of the country strong reminds him, a little bit undersized from a height standpoint, kind of does remind you a little bit of Stetson, more of a tough ass? Like, do you think this changes this Georgia team, maybe even for the better overall? Like, I think Kirby Smart wanted to start the best quarterback, so he started Carson Beck. I trust Kirby Smart, but like, what do you think? Does this work out?
Man, I'll always put my money on a Georgia boy, the pride of Rabun County right there in Gunnar Stockton. One more comment on the terrorist attack you were talking about. Maybe we should mobilize the Booster Club here in some way. I don't know if that's through some sort of fundraising effort, or maybe we can do something for the victims and the families, but maybe the Booster Club, y'all come up with some creative ideas on how we can help and how we can be a positive force in this horrific situation. For the game plans on these teams, though, if I'm Mike Bobo and I'm calling plays for Georgia here, I want to be cognizant of two things. One, I understand how great our defense can be when they really put their minds to it. I've seen it against Texas twice. Georgia could win a football game like this 7-3. That's not out of the realm of possibility. But I also want to be cognizant of the fact that with Gunnar Stockton at quarterback, or really even when Carson Beck was at quarterback, we're not the type of team that is going to play so well from behind double digits, or if you're down 14-0, if you're down 17-3. I think the Alabama game was an anomaly. I know they were down 28-0, and they came out and just said, we're going to throw seam routes for 2 quarters and just see if it gets us back in the game, and it did. That's not really how they're built usually, especially when you have a new quarterback. So I would call a balanced game plan early. You're not going to see Mike Bobo come out and call plays like he has Cam Ward at quarterback. But also, the thing that I took away from that Notre Dame game against Indiana was how aggressive the linebackers were. Downhill on every single play, just daring Rourke, you're going to have to beat us through the air. You're not going to get a run game going. I think Notre Dame is going to have a similar defensive strategy. And if that's the case, I'm not just turning around and handing the football off 3 times in a row and then punting it drive after drive. Let this guy go get you some yards, 1 with his feet and 2 off of play action. Obviously, that's easier easier to do if you can get some sort of run game going. I'd be very careful how much I pitch backwards and call passing plays on early downs with him, but that may be a situation you find yourself in the second quarter or in the third quarter if you're up, or especially if you're down. So I'd have a balanced game plan early. Let's just see how we're going with this one. See if Riley Leonard turns it over early. Maybe we're up 7-0 early after this. And if I'm Notre Dame, I'm not really changing too much. Don't go into this thinking, oh, well, Georgia has their backup quarterback, so, we can play really conservatively and we're just going to beat Georgia. I wouldn't change anything. I'd be aggressive if I'm Notre Dame.
And I think this Notre Dame team is the most equipped Notre Dame team to take on a team like Georgia as opposed to the ones we've seen in the past. But also to that point, Cone, I mean, I've had a bunch of Georgia fans reach out to me and say, well, Gunnar Stockton's going to run it a lot more. Well, I can understand if everybody was healthy and you had, a guy behind Gunnar Stockton that you weren't worried about putting out there, but you're already on your second quarterback. So are you going to say, screw it? He's tough. We're going to have a bunch of quarterback design runs to give us an extra hat in the box to block. And if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. I'm just wondering how much of that you're going to see from Mike Bobo. So it's going to be an interesting game today. I think this could end up as good as that Texas-Arizona State game was. I think this could maybe end up being the game of the tournament. I really believe that, as evenly matched as these teams are. All right, let's get back to the chat here. Then we're going to get to some best and worst, a little NFL, and get out of here.
All right, let's go to Money is Silver. He says Notre Dame plays the most like Michigan, and that's a bad matchup against Georgia. We'll see if the Georgia quarterback can actually get it done.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big question.
Go to G Hurd. If Gunnar Stockton was so good, why didn't Genius Kirby get him snaps while Beck was busy tossing pick after pick?
That's what I've tried to tell my Georgia friends who, and again, I get it. You're a fan, so you're going to try and see, the best version of what's going on. But like I put out on social, if you think Gunnar Stockton is better than Carson Beck, that's fine. But then you also have to say you don't think Kirby Smart knows what he's doing at quarterback. That's you. Both those things can be true, right? And then people say, well, he didn't play Stetson early. Okay. All right. So you think he screwed up twice the same way? Like he didn't learn from that mistake? I just think Kirby Smart is going to put the guy out there that he thinks gives them the best chance to win. And if he thought that was Carson Beck, guys won 2 out of the last 3 national championships. I mean, I think I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt who he's going to put out at quarterback. But all right, let's move on. We'll get to the donos later. Let's go best and worst here. Coney, this is from all the other bowl games. So not the playoff games, all the other bowl, which you can make a great case. The bowl games on the outside have been better than the playoff. I mean, I know there's more of them, but like consistently they've been better. Give me your best first.
Oh, well, I've got to go Michigan beating Alabama in the ReliaQuest Bowl. Really, the best is that my marriage was able to survive a third house-divided matchups in our 5 years of marriage.
2-1. You're 2-1, right?
2-1, yes. And the only one we were at in person, Alabama beat Michigan the year that we got married. So I'm not going to these games in person ever again. I'm just going to watch on TV. But look, anytime they get a chance to match these two brands up, they do so. And look, we talked about this game. All the All-Americans, all the first-round picks that Michigan's going to have, they were in a different situation where they actually have more potential first-round picks than Alabama in this particular matchup. They all sat out. Meanwhile, all the guys for Alabama are going. Jalen Milroe played, and we thought, hey, this is going to be a springboard for Kalen DeBoer into 2025. And it was as ugly as it could possibly be early. Alabama had more turnovers than yards at one point before halftime, and you saw the explosiveness right there before the half, and it looked like, okay, Alabama's going to come back. But this Wink Martindale defense, even with the backups in there, and I mean, they played their tail off. They fought, man, for 4 quarters. Michigan, it really has something special going, because I think from a personnel standpoint, you're not going to see them be any worse than they were these past 2 games they've played, and that's 2 wins over top 15 teams while giving up, fewer than, 15 points to each of them? I mean, they might finish the year ranked here.
Well, I wonder what the odd – if you'd have told me that Michigan ended the season beating Ohio State and Alabama, I would say, oh, my God, how did Sharon Moore win the national championship without a quarterback? Like, not that they went, 8-5?
Yeah.
Is that what they finished?
Yeah.
You end the season beating Ohio State on the road and Alabama in Tampa. And you go 8-5. That's an incredible down year after winning an.
And you kept every big-time trophy in Ann Arbor. You know, you beat Michigan State. You beat your biggest rival. You kept the Brown Jug there. I mean, we forget now that Michigan lost 4 out of 5 in the middle of this season, got blown out by Texas early in the year, and somehow it's the greatest 8-5 a coach has ever had in college football history.
And you got the number one player, like apparently ever in the history of the world coming in at quarterback. But Blaine, I know you got another best, but on this note, do you have Alabama as one of your worst?
Yeah, Alabama's not word poverty.
Nice.
I mean, it's just, you know, I haven't seen a guy get worse throughout the season in a long time, to be honest. Jalen Milroe has gotten worse throughout the season. That's not the Jalen Milroe I saw in the Georgia game. Not even close. It was 4 quarters of bad football. And to be honest right now, Kalen DeBoer, you're in trouble.
For next year?
I hope you know.
What does trouble mean, Blaine?
Yeah, define trouble.
That you better make it to the playoff next year.
I don't think that's crazy.
You better make it to the playoff next year or they'll kick your ass to the curb.
You lose to Auburn, too, on the road?
You need to know where you are, buddy. You're in Russia, okay? Russian planes don't crash, all right? Alabama wins football games. That's what you lost to a bunch of second stringers.
Yeah.
You lost to a bunch of backups, and you played everybody. And you got – Davis Warren got hurt.
Yeah.
Got hurt.
Michigan literally couldn't throw a forward pass. Not just like they didn't throw it.
You have coaches running into referees on the sidelines on 3rd and 12s. Nick Saban would have killed somebody on national television. But hey, Kevin DeBoer, sorry guys, get to the sideline. It's all right. I'm telling you right now, it's a problem. I know these fans. I know these people. They're not going to wait another year.
Well, how much trouble is he in?
I think the level of prove it has gone up. Here, think about this, guys. He beat Georgia, he beat LSU, and he beat Auburn. But this season is viewed as a massive failure because this is why because it's easy to sit here and say, yeah, you got to have balls, man. You can't be afraid to take that job after Nick Saban when you're not the one that has to do it. To Blaine's point, you basically entered Mission Impossible. This is Mission Impossible. There is no way. Kalen DeBoer, I think he's a really good football coach. He ain't Nick. I don't think anybody ever will be. I don't think you'll ever be able to have that much control. You left a perfect situation at Washington. Perfect. The fans, they have a standard there, but you played what in the national championship game? Like you're in the Big Ten. You're at a big time place. You can recruit there. You got NIL money. You decided to follow Darth Vader. That's what you decided to do, and it's going to be impossible because guess what? The Empire fans, they're not happy unless the whole planet they're fighting explodes. It's not okay to win a battle.
Yeah.
You sure as hell can't lose to Vandy. So as far as Jalen Milroe, Blaine, he went Benjamin Button, and not in a good way. He went Benjamin Button. From an older, smart guy, regressed. Now he just looks like the new Jalen Milroe, baby Jalen Milroe. He hasn't gotten older. He's gotten younger. And it's for a couple reasons. One, you got to put it on Jalen Milroe. He had guys open in that game down the field. He was not knowing what he was seeing. He did not know what he saw.
They were open.
Jeremy Bernard was about to have a seizure on the field. He was so pissed at Jalen Milroe. How many times he was open, especially on those deep crossers. But also, whatever teaching is going on, that's on that as well. Jalen Milroe's an older guy. He should know that. But this just seems like this system does not fit Jalen Milroe at all. And how you remember at the beginning of the year, we're like, well, Alabama needs to fit the system. They need to tailor the system to Jalen Milroe. We even, when we talked to Kalen DeBoer at the Senior Bowl, said, I've got to adjust my system to Jalen Milroe. Here's where I think the problem is. I don't think Kalen DeBoer was Superman. I think Ryan Grubb was. I think Kalen DeBoer just put on the Superman outfit and walked around and people pointed while the real Superman was in the lab with a pen and a pad trying to get this damn label off. That's what I think. I think Ryan Grubb took one look at Jalen Milroe and said, how quick can I get to the Seahawks? How quick can I get back to Washington? I am starting to think, and we need more sample size. And I know Ryan Grubb wasn't with, Kalen DeBoer when he was at Blind Woman State or whatever it was, or like the City Council of Minneapolis Tech or wherever he was before that. But I'm starting to think maybe it was Ryan Grubb with the side of Kalen DeBoer, not Kalen DeBoer with a side of Ryan Grubb. That's what I'm starting to think.
Well, obviously, this one is tough for me because one of my best friends is the offensive coordinator. I have family members on this staff now, and none of them are confused about what the standard is at Alabama. Trust me, they know. But it's one thing to know what the standard is, and it's another thing to live up to it. And keep in mind, just earlier this very year, Alabama lost to Michigan too, and that was with Nick Saban as their head coach. Everything you're saying, though, I think you're right on track when we start talking about the specifics of Jalen Milroe and this system. Remember, I think the Superman that we're talking about is Michael Penix Jr. was throwing to 3 NFL wide receivers on that Washington staff. And Michael Penix Jr. is already coming for the Falcons and showed that he belongs. So we've always said, man, everything that Kalen DeBoer wants to do from an offensive standpoint doesn't really, like Jalen Milroe's really not the type of guy to do that. At the same time, he finished 6th in the Heisman Trophy voting in Nick Saban's last year. He's going to be the starting quarterback. Maybe they can tailor this offense around him and get the most out of him. And for a lot of games, it looked like that. I still think Alabama's first half against Georgia was as impressive of a performance as I've seen in the entirety of the LSU game, as impressive as I've seen. Go back and look at that Oklahoma tape. The players didn't play good. This was a disaster against Michigan. And so Nick Sheridan's going to take a lot of the blame, and Kalen DeBoer is going to take a lot of the blame. I'm looking down the field, I'm seeing guys that are open. Jalen Milroe's not hitting them. How much of that is because the teaching is off, like you're talking about, and how much of that is the players just aren't executing? I don't know. I don't know what, Blaine, you said Kalen DeBoer is going to be in trouble if they don't make the college football playoff next year. I think that there's an element of that that's accurate. I mean, if you don't make a playoff that's tripled in size 2 years in a row at Alabama, the pressure is going to do nothing but mount up.
Alabama fans, Ohio State fans, they're in the same realm. Ryan Day's won 11 games almost every year, 10 games. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. Alabama wins championships. They definitely don't lose to a bunch of second stringers in the ReliaQuest Bowl when we play a bunch of starters.
Yeah, but Blaine, the difference is Ryan Day, and you're right about Ohio State and Alabama fans having that same standard, right? That same fanaticism, which is a great thing. Right. I think it can move you forward. It can set you back some, but at the end of the day, it moves you forward. But Ryan Day had built up equity with the Ohio State fans. He had beaten Michigan before, right? Kalen DeBoer's done nothing for Alabama fans because they, as much as I want them, as much as I want to sit here as a guy from Auburn, and y'all know we always call it straight on Alabama. Either way, I picked them to beat Auburn. They did. But as much as I want to think Alabama just cares about Auburn before championships, not anymore. Not anymore. That's not the truth. The truth is Auburn cares about Alabama more than Alabama cares about Auburn. And that's okay because Alabama has won these national championships. Just beating a bad Auburn team at home does not move the needle. Does not move the needle. You didn't make the playoff. They're watching Ohio State. They're watching Texas. They're watching Georgia, and they're just getting more pissed and more pissed and more pissed and more pissed. And then Michigan beats you in the ReliaQuest, .com bowl or whatever with basically nobody and me at quarterback. There's no equity. As I said when he got the job, the Alabama fans do not care how many games he won at Sioux Falls. They do not care how great he did at Washington. That did nothing for them. He has not delivered for them so far, and it's only 1 year. And yes, it's unfair, but you knew it was unfair when you signed up, and you're still at Alabama. But here's the problem. We're moving in a new era. How long until that Alabama brand is not viewed at the levels they were in the past? That's what scares Bama fans the most. Don't get anything twisted. They feel like they're regressing back to the common man. It's like I'm watching Wolf Hall, right? This series about King Henry and the court. You know what the people in the court worry the most about? losing favor with the king because they get sent out back with the blacksmith's boy. That's what they're worried about at Alabama. They've got to walk around and eat all the steak and grapes and wines and have all the jewels and diamonds. But now they're worried they're going to find themselves out in the market selling cinnamon and oranges.
So
That's
what's Jalen Milroe going to do? What's Jalen Milroe going to do? Because it sounds like he played his last game at Alabama. Am I wrong?
I think, David, do they want him back?
I know he's going to do NIL videos in the tunnel before the game instead of warming up.
Do they want him back?
I saw that too. No, of course. In this moment right here, like I just said a minute ago, college football fans overreact in the moment more than any other sport. Every Alabama fan on the planet right now doesn't want Jalen Milroe back because they're only thinking about these last couple performances and not some of the good things that he's done. That doesn't make them wrong, though, right? And especially when we're talking about the type of system that Kalen DeBoer wants to run. What I'm asking, though, is this the grass is always greener situation? All of a sudden next year, they've moved on from Jalen Milroe. They don't have a solid plan to come in and play quarterback that's going to be better, even though it may fit the system better. And all of a sudden you're looking down and you're 9-4 again.
You go ahead, Blaine, because I got something. I got something I want to say on this. I just want to double check something.
Yeah, I think Jalen Milroe's a good quarterback. I think his ceiling is extremely high. I'd take him at Auburn in a heartbeat. What worries me the most, to be honest, with this Kalen DeBoer situation is like you still have Nick Saban's guys, right?
Yeah.
If there's ever a year, your first year, and I know Nick Saban lost some games in his first year, but that's a lot different roster than what he had, than what Kalen DeBoer has this year. You had the talent, you had the guys, and you lost games you shouldn't have lost. So I just don't know if it's going to get better from here, and I don't know if losing Jalen Milroe is going to help. You still have Ryan Williams and all these guys. Are they going to stay? It's just Kalen DeBoer. He's in tough water right now. In the Jalen Milroe situation, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw the last game.
Jake?
Here's what I think is going to happen, because I'm looking at the draft boards and like Jalen Milroe's like, who has a chance to make a lot of money? I think is Jackson Dart in this bowl game, because if you look at Carson Beck kind of falling down. You look at Jalen Milroe. I think they had him as the 5th overall. Mel Kiper, who, don't even get me started on that guy. I think he's a vampire anyway. But he had him as like his 5th overall quarterback. I don't know if Jalen Milroe, if it's the right time for him to enter the NFL draft right now. Here's what I think is going to happen. I think he transfers to Miami. I think since Caden Salter went to Colorado, he's going to transfer to Miami. I think Jalen Milroe will be Miami's quarterback next year. That's what I think. Because when you bring up the system, you're exactly right. Jalen Milroe in Auburn's system, the RP, I think he'd be a monster. He'd be a monster. Jalen Milroe in Gus Malzahn's system, absolute monster. Jalen Milroe in really Kalen DeBoer and Diet Ryan Grubb's system, I don't think it's going to work. I think you're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and you have to make the decision, well, do I change my offense to fit Jalen Milroe for another year, or do I finally bring in a guy and start building my personnel the way I want it to fit my system? I think they're going to choose the latter. I think the better question is, does Jalen Milroe go to the NFL or does he transfer? I don't know why Miami just seems right to me, but since Mateer went to Oklahoma, I'm wondering if we could see Jalen Milroe maybe to Miami, or maybe even, we'll see what happens with Carson Beck, but he declared for the NFL draft. So I know you can come back.
That's an interesting thought to Miami. I don't see Jalen Milroe as being a franchise quarterback. I've been wrong on guys before, though, but I will say if there's ever a time to go out in a draft class, it would be this one. This ain't a year ago, right? With 6 quarterbacks in the top 12, and all of them are playing, except J.J. McCarthy's injured right now. All of them are playing. All of them are playing well. This is the year where you would go out. I don't think this draft class is as deep as others that we have seen, but either way, what was your best from the bowl games?
Man, my best, first off, I've given Lincoln Riley and USC a lot of hell, and it's been deserved. They've underachieved since he's been there. I feel like there's times where they've laid down, but against Texas A&M, I was shocked. I was shocked. They got down early, fought their way back. Jaden Maaba in there at quarterback. Obviously, Miller Moss transferring to Louisville, which I think is a fantastic fit, by the way. I was very surprised with all the wide receivers they have in the portal. It's just amazing. And I know Lemon was making plays during the year, but just USC just always has guys. It's like LSU. They just always have guys. They can lose 6 wide receivers. The Lemon guy looked like Jalen Waddle to me. He looked like Jalen Waddle to me, like a clone of Jalen Waddle. And the fact that Lincoln Riley and that team was able to stand up and what they did in the second half of that game against a team in A&M that was more together, right? There were less guys that got in the portal. Mike Elko's building. It was a tough loss against Texas at home to end the regular season. That was probably my most surprising. I was more surprised that USC beat A&M than I was Navy beating Oklahoma. So I got to give Lincoln Riley his flowers after, downing them. It doesn't change that much, right? He's still got to prove it at USC. But I think him and then Fran Brown at Syracuse. I know Washington State lost their quarterback to Oklahoma to follow Arbuckle to OC. But what Fran Brown did at Syracuse, it reminds me of what Bruce Pearl's doing at Auburn for basketball. You not that it was ever impossible. I remember when Syracuse was good with Dwight Freeney. I remember when they beat Auburn up, Jason Campbell's freshman year when they went up there in the Carrier Dome. But just the way that he's done it, the toughness at Syracuse, and Kyle McCord really blossoming. Those are my two best. I've been very, very, surprised. Not that Fran Brown had success, but the way that he's had it. It's just really impressive.
USC went 7-6 and beat LSU and Texas A&M. So again, not a bad year to build off for 2025, but still disappointing by the standards that they want to set for sure. What was your best, Blaine?
Look, man, the Birmingham Bowl. Diego Pavia, Vanderbilt. I tell you what, just lived up to all raining, windy. Lived up to all the expectations you want. Diego Pavia coming back for his 40th year is going to look Heisman finalist.
How many's he got to win?
How many games can you win at Vandy and enter the Heisman? So I thought it was a great bowl game just to watch those two teams collide. I tell you what, man, not only Diego Pavia, but Haynes King, he lays it on the line every time he goes and plays, man. I don't know if I've seen a game where he's got up in his jersey's not 7 different colors and he's barely walking to the sideline. So I just thought that was a phenomenal football game to watch.
Every time I see Haynes King, I just see Mike Winchell versus Dallas Carter.
Literally,
like just beat to pieces. Like watching him, like I've never felt more personal pain than watching Haynes King get up.
Yeah,
like he just gets up like an old wrestler, that's like 75 years old. Like he just gets up. You can see in his face. He's like, like anywhere he turns, like I can hear my bones cracking. But all right, I'm gonna get to my worst real quick, guys. Brett Bielema, Shane Beamer. What are we doing? It was a great game. Great game. And I know some people love it. I love some feistiness. But I'm going to be honest with you. If Brett Bielema would have came over to my sideline doing that, y'all would have had to hold me back too. Listen, you can talk all the ish you want from your sideline. That's fine. We'll go back and forth. I've done it before. It's kind of fun. It's just like my neighbor, if you want to talk trash to me and you're standing on your front porch, you talk it, I'll stand on mine and talk it. But if you walk over into my yard, now you have entered my property. Now I reserve the right to whip your ass. And you're making fun of me? I get why Shane was so hot, but man, getting that hot and then losing, that handshake was so anticlimactic. Everybody was building it up. They're like, dog, they're going to throw hands. I'm telling you, if Shane Beamer would have won that game, if South Carolina would have won that game, I think there would have been a fight. I think Shane would have said something. I would have given the hand and like taken it away, like, the lunch table cool. Blaine, I know you too. If a coach would have came over to your sideline mocking you, like we can talk about maturity and all that. I can't let you do that. Talk about getting beat up in front of your kids. I can't let you beat me up in front of my kids.
You want to talk about targeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right when I see I'm watching you the whole game anyways. Right when I see you start walking, I'm immediately meeting you halfway.
I'll tell you, man, what a great football game that was. I have so much respect for both of these head coaches. I was a little surprised to see Brett Bielema do something like that in a scenario where one of his players is injured. Yeah. Like that guy's down. That surprised me a little bit. And my dad and I were watching all of this play out. And there's an element to the old school Tom Landry, a poised coach, who's never over emotional on the sidelines that we all love. We all respect. You need that at times. But then there's an element too, and this is going to get into my worst on Cam Ward, that, hey, at least Shane Beamer, at least one coach is out here passionate about his bowl game and he cares enough to get this fired up. I'll tell you another thing to your point about the handshake after. I love that the guys can show that much emotion, be that passionate about the football game, and then after, when the game is over and the clock's at 0, to be able to go and shake hands and move on to their press conference. I mean, I do like that aspect of it. Is there any part of what Shane Beamer was mad about throughout the game with the substitutions that you thought wasn't being called correctly, Jake?
No. Listen, I don't have a problem with either coach having a problem with what was called. My problem is, listen, you can think that. That's fine. You can say that on your sideline to me. You can say that in your press conference after the game. But when you walk over toward my sideline and you're checking on an injured player, so I'm giving you the grace to do that, right? Like nobody, hey guys, let's get away from him. Take a knee. He's hurt. Let's hope he's okay or whatever. But you use that opportunity. I would much rather nobody being hurt. You just walk over. Just come on and walk over then. But the way you kind of did it was you went and checked on the injured guy, and everybody's like, oh, it's fine. He's close to our sideline or whatever. Then you started making fun of me. Like that to me, it was, you can say, oh, it was a Jedi mind trick to get Shane Beamer fired up. I can go ahead and tell you Shane Beamer was already fired up. You don't need to ignite a fire under Shane Beamer's not playing. He's not taking a snap, not catching the ball, whatever. South Carolina scored right after that to take the lead. So it's not like they just freaked out and forgot. I just think the way you went about complaining and then you knew it was going to – you knew it. It's like growing up, like with siblings. I know what's going to upset you. I know what's going to piss you off. And if I'm just feeling some type of way, I'm going to press those buttons. And that's what Brett Bielema did. And I'm telling you, there was nothing fake about Shane Beamer being that. If they would have let Shane Beamer go, I think he would have ran over to him. Like now, do I think he would have swung on him? I don't know. Maybe something would have popped in his head on the way over there. But like, you can't test my gangster like that. Like, if you're going to test my gangster like that, then you're going to find out. Like, don't mistake kindness for weakness. And I tell you what, I'd probably put my money on Sugar Shane.
Shane B.
Yeah.
Well, my worst from bowl season so far is Cam Ward, the quarterback at Miami, playing in the first half of his game to break an individual passing record and then not playing in the second half of the game. Now, look, we've seen over the last decade plus where these bowl games are not college football playoff games, the importance is seemingly less. And you got guys who are certified first rounders who don't want to play an extra game with a chance of getting injured and wrecking their entire future. Where this gets complicated is in the NIL era, Cam Ward could possibly have gone to the NFL a year ago. He decided to come back because Miami ponied up the cash, ponied up the NIL money for him to play. And so he's going to play in the first round of a game, but not play in the second round. And I understand, like, I wish guys would never opt out. I want to see football players play football. That's why I have so much respect for guys like Matt Corral, who went out there and played and balled and ended up getting injured and it hurt his draft stock. But I'm not oblivious to conceptually doing what's best for you in your future. I can't say what I would have done. I was never fortunate enough to be in that position. If my son somehow finds himself in that scenario where it's better off for him in the future of the family for him to not play a half of a football or not play an entire football game, certainly we're going to have that conversation and we're going to, do whatever we think is best for him. But to watch a guy go out there and say that this game is important enough for me to play in the first half where I could get injured until I break this record, but not in the second half of the game, I just have a real problem with that. And that aside, what I have an even bigger problem with is watching all of college football and sort of the media world defend it by saying, well, this is okay. This is basically a preseason game. Well, in the preseason, your stats don't count. So if this game matters enough for your stats that you're breaking records into count, then the game should matter enough. And I'm watching a 1-point ball game here where your team's trying to win and get a victory, and you're on the sideline clapping, trying to coach up the second string quarterback. It just doesn't sit right with me. I don't think it sits right with a lot of college football fans across the country, but there clearly is a faction of the nation that thinks that they have no problem with this. So I just wanted to see what you guys thought.
Well, I think a lot of people, your thoughts on this depend on what era you grew up in, whether it be right now in this environment, and you're playing or you're a part of it, or you're like us who may be a little bit older, not super old, but then we know what the older people think. It's hard for me to kind of take a 50,000-foot view of this because I didn't grow up in this era. I think we view this through totally different prisms. And when that happens, you're going to have people. I think you have some older people that are trying to be cool. I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to make fetch work, and they're trying to sound like young and hip. So they're like, no, it's fine. It doesn't really matter. When they grew up in an era, and we grew up in an era, Blaine, even you're the youngest here, but this is it's almost like when it stopped being cool to go outside and play. Like people accepting that are like, when we watch all these kids play video games, we're like, how, I don't understand that. We used to play outside till the street light went on. Well, people change. Environments change. Society changes. I think this is the new environment of college football. So, the only thing I ask is that people keep the same energy. Just be consistent. If you're going to get mad at Cam Ward, you should be mad at Kyle Trask a couple years ago, who did basically the same thing. So even though I'm from a different era, I can be consistent. Now, personally, if it was me, if the game wasn't important enough for me to play the second half, it wasn't important enough for me to play the first half. If it was too dangerous for me to play the second half because of my future, it was too dangerous for me to play the first half. That's how I would have approached it. And again, like you said, Cone, I've never been in that situation before where there's that much money on the table. If it was my son, he would not have played in that game, even if he wanted to. That's what I would have told him, or that would have been the advice I would have given him, because it wasn't a championship game. I want bowl games to matter. To me, it looks worse when you play the first half and you don't play the second. If you just came out and said, listen, one, Emory Williams, I want him to have a chance to be the starting quarterback next year. He needs these reps. He needs reps in a big game, just like Nico needed him against Iowa, right? Just like Miller needed him in their bowl game last year. I could understand that. But to me, let me ask you this, because I think this has to do with Saquon as well. Because
that's why I wanted to talk about this last, so we could segue into that.
Yeah, I think there's some similar things there, because in reality, in the regular season, this game doesn't matter for the Eagles. They can't improve their position. They can't hurt their position. But he's trying to break a record. So is it worth you risking your health and your team in the playoffs for you to go get a record? Because that's basically what Cam Ward did. But he didn't risk his team's future. He risked his future. So in a way, I think it is kind of an unselfish decision, but I would have just not played the whole game, dog. Like, you're not going to lose draft stock because you didn't break this one record. You're getting taken where you're going to get taken.
So, Blaine, we'll set up the Saquon Barkley thing in a second, because I want this to segue right into that. I think it's an important conversation. But what are your thoughts on what Cam Ward did?
He should have never played. Should have never played. Why would you ever? I would have never let my kid play in this game ever for the Pop-Tart Bowl. Buddy, you're a top 5 pick. You're not playing in this. And it's funny we sit here and talk about it. What I think is, what Miami fan? I bet Miami fans could care less. Could care absolute less. You had your golden ticket, your golden goose, Cam Ward, and you didn't even make the playoffs. You don't think they care about the Pop-Tart Bowl?
Blaine, the bowl game was a microcosm of the whole season.
You had Damian Martinez. You had Bain. You had all these weapons out of the portal, and you couldn't put a defense on the field good enough to stop a single soul. Miami fans, we could talk about it all we want, but they could give a rat's ass whether Cam Ward played a quarter, 2 quarters, 3 quarters.
I had one text me that this was pathetic. I mean, maybe he's the only one, but it's pathetic. And Miami rushed for 308, by the way, and gave up 42 points to Iowa State and lost.
They were this year's LSU.
Does the game matter? Does it not matter? I mean, I want to see guys finally realize that they only get so many times to go suit up and play the game. As someone who's now 37 and I can't ever play football ever again in an organized fashion, I want them to understand you only get so many opportunities. At the same time, I understand that, you have to have a long view of your future and what's going on with the NFL. I disagree with you, Jake, that I don't like playing one half of football, especially when you're trying to like break some individual record, but your team's sitting there in a dogfight late in the game, and you're watching trying to clap when you could have gone in and helped them win the game. Now, the Saquon Barkley situation, just so everyone understands what we're talking about, Saquon Barkley for the Philadelphia Eagles is 100 yards away from breaking the NFL season rushing record, Eric Dickerson's record. If he rushes for 101 yards this upcoming weekend, he'll be the all-time leader in the season. The Eagles have already clinched that number 2 spot in the playoffs for this final game of the season, the 17th game. Most teams rest their starters. They don't play them for a chance to get hurt and not win in the playoffs and not win a Super Bowl. So now we're in a situation, and Nick Sirianni, the Eagles head coach, has said he hasn't come to a decision, at least as we sit here right now, of what's going to happen. Would you guys, if not only if you're Saquon Barkley, give me that perspective, but also the organization and Nick Sirianni as the head coach's perspective on going out and trying to get this individual record versus just resting your players and not getting them hurt for the playoffs?
I think this is the easiest question in the world for both of them. I think you always ask yourself, what is best for our team? What is best for our team to win a Super Bowl? So whether you're Nick Sirianni or whether you're Saquon Barkley, I would be willing to bet, and I don't know Saquon personally, I'd be willing to bet that he would trade 500 yards that he's gotten already for a Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. That's why he went to Philadelphia, to win a Super Bowl. He hasn't won one. You already got a quarterback that's been in concussion protocol, right, who's trying to rest up. So they're going to need to lean on you in the playoffs even more now. So if you're Nick Sirianni, of course you don't want him to play because you don't want him to get hurt because he is your best player. You can say what you want about A.J. Brown. I think there's a great argument for Lane Johnson being the best player in the Eagles. There's some guys on defense that are really talented, but Saquon is your guy that's different. He is more different. Will always be an X factor regardless of who you play. And there's some really, really good players out there. Really, really good players out there. So if you're Nick Sirianni, of course not. If you're Saquon Barkley, is it worth it to you? Would you trade Eric Dickerson's record for a Super Bowl? I don't think so. I don't think so. And while there are some similarities in this, and Cone, to your point, the only playing a half sends mixed messages. That's what you don't want to send mixed messages. You want to send a strong message of, I'm in it because I care about it. I'm playing the whole game. Or I'm not in it because, guys, it's not worth it. It's the Pop-Tarts Bowl. The most important thing that's going to happen is which one they choose to put in the toaster at the end of the game. So I'm not going to play it. I'm going to top 5 pick. I can at least respect that. You made a decision and stood on it. To me, you played it both ways if you were Cam Ward, and I hate when that happens. But as far as Saquon, I think the answer is no. The answer is no. I think it's pretty simple. Because
you could have a similar situation here where Saquon gets his 105 yards in the first half, breaks his individual record, doesn't play the second half, sort of plays out a lot like the Cam Ward situation. Before I just get into a little bit more of a nuanced discussion, Blaine, what do you think? Is this just a no-brainer? Saquon Barkley, you just don't play in this football game?
Hey, great regular season, bud. Great regular season. Even if you did it, Eric Dickerson did it in less games, no one's going to take it serious.
And that's another part of the nuance I was talking about. I mean, the number of games, and no one's going to put an asterisk by it. You'll be the all-time rushing leader for a single season, but people will continue to talk about that, just like they talked about with Roger Maris and Babe Ruth and the number of games and things like that. If it's just about winning the Super Bowl, then to both your guys' point, yeah, of course, like it's a no-brainer. Like the team award is far more important than the individual record, and that's why I think if you're in there's different perspectives here that could come to different outcomes. If I'm Nick Sirianni and my job security just depends on how well we do in the postseason and in the Super Bowl, then no, like I'm not playing this guy. And I think Saquon Barkley has proven over the course of his career he's so selfless that he would 100% be on board with that. But to me, there's an element of this that's beyond just the individual rushing record. There's an element of this that we have to understand. The thing we're talking about, the reason people sit on their couches and watch these games week after week after week is this is entertainment. And we all want to see what is a human being capable of when they run out there every single week and they give their best. So I think fans around the country want to see, hey, what if Saquon Barkley rushes for 200 yards and resets a mark in the NFL? And I just think back to the golden age of our sport when we're talking about the Johnny Unitises of the world or Joe Namath. I mean, there was never any thought about not playing in a football game. It's time to play football. You go out and play. Has the game changed in the sport? And we're just, to your point about the different eras and different generations, Jake, your value shouldn't change generation to generation, right? But I understand that the circumstance does. And are we just in a situation where it's like, hey, you just don't take the chance of getting your star player injured when you could win a Super Bowl?
Well, it's an interesting argument. I think a lot of it depends on, again, your age. But to your point, yeah, your value shouldn't change, but you do have to realize, again, and you brought up circumstance. I mean, back in the old NFL, you didn't have to win this many games in the playoff. Like, the playoff wasn't this long. I mean, the amount of games you have to play so you've changed the circumstance. So if you change the circumstance, I can keep my values the same, but that doesn't mean I have to bang my head against the wall. I think there's a big difference in load management we've seen in the NBA during the regular season and this type of load management because your work's already done, right? If I hire you to mow my lawn and for a year straight, you're coming on time, you do a great job mowing my lawn. Hey, if one time you can't make it, you're sick, I get that. Or if something happens and you're not able to you've earned the right for me to give you the benefit of the doubt. I think Saquon Barkley, because of his actions, has earned the right to say, guys, this game is not going to move the needle for us. We have to win more games than ever now in the NFL playoffs, especially if you don't get a bye. So I think the circumstances changed. Now, as far as you brought up kind of I just wonder. I think it is a little bit different, too. If this was a team that hadn't won a Super Bowl in a long time or maybe never, I don't think there's any question whether Saquon Barkley, if he was on your team, there's no way he'd play in this game. I think the only reason we're talking about him possibly playing is because the Eagles have won Super Bowls, and we've seen them. I think if this was the Chargers or the Jags or the Raiders or the Cowboys, there is no chance Saquon Barkley is playing in this game. But since the Eagles have been so dominant as of late, I think it opens the door for a little bit of the talk. That's what I think.
I just think there's also an opportunity. I mean, you could go get hurt and never play football again, much less play in this postseason, and then there's going to be a certain reaction from the country on that. Or you could go out and rush for 150, be the all-time season rushing yards leader, and then go win the Super Bowl. And then there's an element that gets talked about for all time in that too.
But David,
I understand the risk, though.
And I know you do, but you brought up the important variable that that has to be talked about. We're not comparing identical things. It's just like Ashton Genty. If he'd have broken Barry Sanders' record by a yard, I wouldn't have counted it because they didn't count Barry Sanders' bowl game. So, we talk about this they even talked about this with Caitlin Clark breaking that record. We've talked about this in Major League Baseball with the home runs, and not just because of steroids, because the amount of games that are being played now. So not only would you be risking an injury, even if you got that record, people have solid ground to stand on to say, hey, dog, these things aren't exactly comparable. So I think that does add to it. I think that does have a little bit to do with it.
You think Dan Campbell would run him out there?
Man,
Dan Campbell, the difference in coaching, is there an element of this that's psychological that, hey, we're going to go get this record and win the Super Bowl? I mean, and just sets the risk aside to set the tone for the playoffs? Or is it just every coach across the board is just, hey, you're not incentivizing me to go get individual rushing records. You're going to fire me if we do this well in the regular season and don't in the postseason. I'm not taking the risk.
Blaine, what do you think?
Yeah, Dan Campbell's going to run him out there. That doesn't mean it's smart.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Dan Campbell would run the president out there if he had the opportunity, but I just think Dan Campbell, he's a different breed, man. He's a different breed, and right now it's working. I mean, look at what the Lions are doing. It's working. Well, I don't think Nick Sirianni would run that. I think Dan Campbell would 24 hours, 7 days a week.
Blaine, if the Lions were playing the Raiders this weekend, do you think Jared Goff plays?
Yes.
You think he plays?
Yes.
I don't know. I think if they weren't playing the Vikings, I don't know if Jared Goff plays.
Well, I'm glad we brought up the Lions because quickly before we go, the scenario this weekend with the Lions hosting the Vikings is one that we've never seen in the NFL. So essentially 2 teams with 13 wins or more facing each other in week 17 to decide the winner of a division, in this case, the NFC North. Lions already beat them by 2 earlier in the season. Do you think the Vikings get payback here and win that division, or are the Lions just going to hold serve at home?
I mean, I feel like you got to go with the home team here, especially if everybody's playing. But like, this is one of those deals, man. This is like Rudy fighting the kid from Slumdog Millionaire. Like, I was rooting for both of y'all. Like, this is like 2 good stories.
Yeah.
These are like 2 positive stories. This is like, it's like the Snow White's dwarves fighting the Lollipop Guild. Like, man, nobody believed in you guys. Like, and now you're balling. So like, I kind of want them, but I wish we could tie. I actually would. This is one of the.
Hey, you can do that in the NFL.
You can do that in the NFL. I would not mind a tie here. Because, look, both in the NFC North, which, by the way, is as good as what we thought it was going to be, even though the Bears are absolute cheeks. But I don't know. This is just like a feel-good story fights a feel-good story. It's like a cancer survivor, fighting a hostage we got back. Like, I don't know who to root for. Like, I like both
when the 2 guys who don't talk crap on the football field play each other.
Yeah.
Right? The 2 nice guys going at it. It's just weird to watch. It's really weird to watch. And quickly, guys, I know we didn't talk about it, but what's y'all's thoughts on the BYU Colorado game?
Man, that was another one. I was shocked. All the guys for Colorado played, which hats off to them for playing, but they got ran.
Here's, there are 2 things. One, for all the hell that Deion Sanders catches, and some of it I think is earned. Right? When you talk and act a certain way, when it doesn't go good, sometimes things happen. His guys played. His guys showed they didn't play for a half, and they're both top 5 picks. Hell, Shadur may go before Cam Ward. So we can sit here and talk about culture, but obviously something's right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they're getting good transfers in. They just won, 9 games? But I was very disappointed in the broadcast because I felt like that's all they talked about and not BYU absolutely whipping their ass. Mm-hmm. I think the story of that game pre-game was, man, this is great. Shadur and Travis are going to play. I think the story during the game should have been how Kalani Sitake, who was on the hot seat going into this year, once again finds a way with a quarterback like Trevor Retzlaff, who we know was beat up at the end of the year, who had turnover problems, in his past, how this team grew up, this team showed up. And after losing a guy like Puka Nacua, like, don't forget, Puka Nacua hadn't been in the league for 5 years. Like, and they always had some huge white tree that was running around catching the ball. This team was built a little different. Was it pretty at times? No, but they won. I was just very disappointed that all that was talked about during the broadcast was how great it was that Shadur and Travis were playing, not that BYU was slowly drowning them in a small puddle of water. So great for BYU. Great for Travis Hunter and Colorado for them playing. It's my hat's off to him, but my hat's off to BYU for winning that game.
Well said.
Yep.
All right.
Go ahead, Blake.
Now I was going to get into donations. You can go ahead.
No, go ahead.
All right, you donated today. Thank you so much on this beautiful new year. First show of the new year, fellas, went well. Let's go to a $5 donation from Serb. He says, "You got this, Jake. You finna be a baller dad, man."
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Counting down. She's at the doctor right now, so I'm going to call her right when we get off here. Last appointment till the appointment, if you know what I'm saying.
$10 donation from Jan. Appreciate it, Jan. The SEC conference is mid. A $10 tip for Jake for winning me some money last week. I can't wait to watch this show tonight.
Yes. Look, it's all the SEC people, and look, I get there's opt-outs and stuff like that. It hadn't been a good look.
No, but it still might be Texas and Georgia round 3.
Yeah, we'll see.
$5 donation from Trey. Appreciate it. He says, "Guys, do you think Milroe should transfer, return, or go to the NFL?"
Yeah, he talked about that a little earlier.
Miami's interesting.
Yeah, I think Miami's very interesting.
$5 donation from Mike. Appreciate it, Mike. Hoosiers need apologies from people. Beat Michigan, only first rounder with a path to win at the end of the game, and better OSU performance than Oregon.
I mean, they are looking better, but it's still not. I mean, like, you went from a 4 to a 6.5. I mean, you lost a little weight, maybe got your teeth fixed, but like, it didn't fix everything.
Can you cook or what? $5 donation from Ty. Appreciate it, Ty. If a receiver is considered defenseless, then as soon as he catches the ball, he's down. Can't run after the catch if you are defenseless.
Facts. Yeah. Stop where you catch it.
Yeah. Stop with all this logic, Ty.
$2 donation from Killer. He says, do you think Tennessee or Oregon had a better showing?
It's hard to get worse than what Oregon did, man.
I mean, Tennessee. I mean, they were kind of similar.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was. I don't know, man. I thought Oregon was better than Tennessee. So, like, well, I don't know. I think it was pretty close, man. At least Tennessee had to play them there, though. I will say that, even though they bought most of the tickets.
$20 donation from Trav. Appreciate it, Trav. Jack Sawyer and JTT are going to be in the backfield tampering with Quinn all night.
Yeah.
And I'm not sold on UT secondary. Laying with OSU. This team is on a dummy mission. OHIO. Hashtag Blaine knows.
Boy,
ball.
you talk about Ryan Day being in the graces, like just being welcomed back to the council. You know, he wins this. You know, I've actually seen some Ohio State fans say losing to Michigan was the best thing that could happen to him. I never thought I'd hear that.
$5 donation.
Let's keep it up.
$5 donation from Jim W. Appreciate it, Jim. Says, guys, Arizona State proved they belong in that football game. I'm going to miss seeing Scatterboo running that rock.
Bro,
Man,
you
awesome.
talking about making some money? Like,
He's going to play in the NFL, man.
Can play for the Chiefs. Mom tell that story about when he was a kid?
What did he do?
He used to take his brother's shoulder pads and run into like telephone poles.
I believe it. Just right now, I believe it.
Obviously not a scientist.
It's like, every time he gets up, I feel like I don't know where he is.
You see him shake his head. He shakes his head like he's just like has nightmares. Like when that run in the touchdown for the touchdown in overtime. I know the offensive lineman dragged him, but like I don't know if you look at the way he's built too. He just built like a smoker.
And Arizona State was blocking nobody.
Nobody
at all. That's all the donations today. Appreciate it, guys.
All right. Hey, back live our normal time Monday, 2 p.m. Central. Do not miss it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. It's going to be a great 2025. We got a couple things up our sleeve as well. Enjoy the Notre Dame Georgia game. Any parting thoughts, gentlemen?
Happy New Year to you boys. Can't wait to be back in Nashville.
Yep. Happy New Year. Y'all be safe. Blaine, you have anything to say? Okay, great. Happy New Year, everybody.
Cool. Great. Awesome.
Make sure you hit that subscribe button. And like the year 2024, we're gone.